All right, we are live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend and thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams are going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's a link in the description. And I see we have Theodore, Tony, and Vishal, and Kraken, and Falcon, let me see, Lancewath and Jeep and Raphael and B. Mitchell and Brian and Wheatman. Thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. So Theodore is starting us off here. He says, my neighbor said he saw a station wagon fusion. Is this possible? We need your expertise on this. There's the Mondeo wagon in Europe, which was the same thing as the Fusion. But there should be no ability to see one in America because I don't believe even Mexico or South America got it. Canada didn't get it. So there's no reasonable way it would have crossed over if they saw it in America. I guess every once in a while you still will see a European car if it's like owned by someone who works at an embassy, or there's a few other scant exceptions where you're allowed to bring a car in if you are a foreign dignitary, things like that. So there's, because every once in a while, because Beth actually has a friend in DC, and sometimes when we would go visit her, I'll see like an oddball car, and I'm like, "What is that doing here?" And it's because there's someone there who is important enough to have them be able to bring their car over from wherever they're from. So, that's interesting. I'm curious where they saw that, but yes, that is a thing in other parts of the world. And let me see. Tony says, hey, man, just watching the blizzard here in New York. Only spot this week was an early 90s Civic Si in that electric blue color. That's cool. I always wanted one of those when I was younger. Yeah, I always thought they were really cool, too. And, customized plenty of them in Need for Speed Underground and stuff like that. And hope that you're doing okay with the blizzard there. I heard that you guys were getting stuff. We got like an inch or so in the past 24 hours. That was about it. But I hope everyone's staying warm, safe, healthy, all that. If you get hit with all that snow. But also, he says, starting my car shopping soon, probably a new CRV hybrid or possibly a Passport. But my wife doesn't want anything too big. She drives a CX-5 now. No more Mazda for me. Has been too much money to fix. Oh, it's a bummer that it hasn't been reliable for you. Yeah, well, between those two, yeah, I mean, both of them are fairly solid, but both of them do also have an outstanding engine issue that hasn't been addressed. The hybrid CRV, even though it's non-turbo, it has the same cooling channel, I believe, as the turbo Hondas. They all kind of have the same kind of design flaw with their motor. Now, it's far less likely that this is happening in the hybrid stuff than it is in the turbos. The 1.5 turbo is the worst from Honda. The 2.0 is largely better, but still is susceptible to similar kinds of issues in more rare instances. And then hybrid, I believe, is rarer yet, but just so you know, it's not there. It's not 100% totally going to be, a solid bet reliability wise. Most likely you would be fine, but it's not, you may end up having some fixes you may have to do there. Passport, that new V6, I believe it's either the cylinder deactivation or there's something in it that also some people have been reporting issues with. Again, overall, I think it's still a pretty reliable motor, but it isn't perfect. So if you are tired of a car, you need to pay to fix. Really, these days, I mean, Mazda's actually usually fairly good, although my sister's had a little bit of bad luck with non-mechanical stuff. Like she has a CX-5 and the headlight housing went, or the headlight leveler, which is automatic, that went bad. If she didn't have an extended warranty, that would have been $1,000. She also just had her front driver, or her front a driver assistance camera kind of stuff that went bad. That was going to be $1,100 if she didn't have the extended warranty. So those two things in the past year alone, she would have been out $2,100. But mechanically, the car is solid. So yeah, I mean, but typically, Mazda and Toyota are my top two recommendations for reliability. But if Mazda has let you down, then I would honestly it's really, you know, a boring recommendation just because it's what everyone says, but really, like, I would probably recommend a Toyota for you if you want something that's really stout. If you're looking CRV hybrid, I'd consider RAV4 hybrid if you know you can get on with one of those. If you want something more rugged, I mean, 4Runner is a lot more expensive than Passport, but you'd be surprised. There actually are some pretty decent discounts on the Land Cruisers since they're not super hot sellers. If you're okay not having a V6, you know, all those Toyota trucks are really great in my opinion. So, and I mean, they're also not perfect with reliability. There's been, you know, some issues with especially in the Tundra and stuff. I think the Tacoma stuff isn't quite as widespread. I don't know. But all I know is that I talked to the chief engineer of Tacoma, and you know, he was like, it's put through our regular Toyota test and our commercial duty tests. And so, you know, he seemed very confident that that was going to be a very solid motor. Time will tell, and we'll see. And again, it seems like it hasn't been perfect still, so I don't know. But it's getting harder and harder. There used to be so many more safe bets from a reliability standpoint, and it's a struggle because I mean, aside from again like the mainstays like the RAV4s and you know a few of the others, you know, Corolla, Camry, stuff like that probably won't let you down. But aside from those few vehicles, there's a lot. I mean, most everything. It's like, okay, well, I know about this issue, I know about this issue, and there's like nothing that is totally perfect. And I don't know if it's just as we're transitioning to this, you know, era of more disposable cars, or you know what the deal is, because mechanical issues to be things that we've figured out long ago. Like it shouldn't be hard to engineer a turbocharged engine these days. Like we've had a long time of, you know, working through that. And you know, so I don't know. It's just kind of disappointing that we hear about so many recalls, so many issues. And I mean, you know, there were issues in the past. You know, there was old Toyota motors that had issues, and you know, nothing's perfect, but it just seems like it's getting harder and harder for me in the past year or so here to recommend anything for someone who wants bulletproof reliability. Again, aside from, you know, Corolla, Camry, and RAV4, basically. But anyway, best of luck with your search. Let me know if you would like any more discussion on that. And I'll still do the car consulting on my website. If you want to book a call and have a one-on-one chat, we can dive into, you know, all your wants and needs and all that too. And Michelle says, I saw a new Boost Blue Prelude on the road today. Good looking car. Shame about the price and performance. Yeah, definitely. And that's cool you saw one though. I have yet to see one. So I'm glad that they're starting to show up on the roads for some people at least. That's cool. And let me see here. So where were we? Kraken says, big news, Matt. I have a new car. The Outback is gone after the never-ending oil consumption problems. I now have a 2016 Mazda CX-3 Grand Touring in Soul Red Crystal. I absolutely love it. I'm glad you love it. You move fast. That's impressive because it was just Wednesday, right? We were chatting about the Subaru and you're, you know, considering the CX-3. So I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And yeah, that'll be a great little car. Should get great fuel economy and all that too. And I hope you enjoy it. So yeah, congrats on that. That's awesome. And hopefully you didn't lose too much money on the Subaru there between, you know, because it was, I think you only had it, was it about a year or so, maybe even less. So hopefully that turned out okay. And Falcon says, hi, Matt. Hope everyone is having a good evening. Just wanted to say it's good to catch this live. Some family medical issues in the last few months. Sorry to hear that. But that BZ Woodland puts me in a good mood. Well, I'm glad that got you excited. Yeah, that one was a fun one to film. If you watched it, you know, a lot of you probably hopefully enjoy it. That's one of the ones where I was really getting excited and really having a good time. And you can see that come through pretty clearly in the video. So I'm glad you enjoy it. And yeah, I hope everything works out with the medical issues with the family there. And that everyone is back to full health here very soon. But glad you're able to catch this one live, and looking forward to chatting with you here. And Kraken says 95,000 miles, cleanest Carfax I've ever seen. Oil changes every 3 months or 3,000 to 5,000 miles. It's stunning. I named it Masami, which is Japanese for beauty. That's awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it. That's great. Michelle says, whose hybrid system do you prefer currently, Toyota or Honda? Driving wise, I still prefer Honda's system, but you know, again, because of the iffiness with reliability potentially down the road, I would say I would be in the Toyota system because it also is really good. And the thing I love about the Toyota system, even though it's not quite as punchy as the Honda system, the Toyota system is so rev happy. It is so willing. I mean, it'll pin it at the drop of a hat, and it's just, you never are waiting for it. You're never trying to coax it. There's never any disconnect, and that's the thing that annoys me with the Hyundai and the Kia hybrid, is it's just, tied to a regular automatic, and it's just, you gotta wait for a turbo to spool up, and it's just a little bit more disconnected. It's all just seamless in the Toyotas, and it really shows, that they've been doing this, longer than basically anyone. I know Honda slightly has an edge on that, I guess, but Toyota's really, never stopped. They've been refining it, the past, what is it now, 30 years pretty much. I mean, they know what they're doing with hybrids, so I think it's why it's, so good. And let me see. Lancelot says, good evening, and I hope everyone has had a good week. No spots this week, sadly. Well, it's all good. Yeah, I didn't really see anything too interesting this week either, I don't think. And let me see. Everyone's discussing their age. And let me see here. Kraken says, Matt, I'll see about snapping a couple flicks sometime this week when I'm not door dashing, and sending them to you for member car of the week. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. I haven't had any member car of the weeks here yet this year, so I'd love that. Yeah, please send them over. I'd love to see the beauty here whenever you can snap a few pics there. And let me see. Lancelot says, I still have no real plans for my birthday on Tuesday other than hanging out with a friend. I'm officially over the hill now. Well, happy early birthday. I hope it is a great one. And if nothing else, just have, a great day doing whatever it is, you love to do, and just, if nothing else, make yourself happy. That's always the best policy, do what you love, and hope it's a good one though. And yeah, I know at a certain age, probably birthdays aren't that exciting, but I hope you still find a little bit of joy on Tuesday as well. And let me see. Now, Brian says, saw the movie Bullet for the first time yesterday. The best part is the chase scene. Absolutely. Yeah, that is one of the best chase scenes of all time, still, in my opinion, too. And yeah, the greatest thing about that, because especially being as old as it was, I mean, there was no fakery really. They actually did that stuff, which is the thing that I still love about some car chases. Most of them are all green screen. The Fast and Furious stuff is mostly useless these days, but like Baby Driver, like almost all of that was real driving. I mean, there was still some real stunt driving in the Fast and Furious movies too, but like, the movies, whenever it's like all real stuff, that's the stuff that gets me way more excited. And so that's one of the things about Bullet. It's like, holy crap, they're actually launching that thing over the hills. And they're doing it with, I think you had drum rear brakes still on those things. And, I mean, I've driven a 60s Mustang. I mean, it took some real guts to send that thing soaring over the hills there, So, yeah, it's such a good movie still. Absolutely love it. I know a lot of people don't like the actual movie and they only like the chase scene, but I think the movie is actually super well done too. The music is fantastic. The jazz score for that is just so good. So many cool places where they filmed, and just, yeah, I don't know. I still love the movie too, which is an unpopular opinion, but I'm dying on that hill. Let me see. Falcon also is, saying I was running a few minutes late, helping Beth with cleaning some piano black trim on the latest test cars. Yeah, no. Well, actually, so this week I have a Lexus RX 500H. That does still have a little bit of piano black plastic, but nope, not bothering with any cleaning of that. That's for sure. Yeah, happy to have you here. And let me see, Lancelot, thank you also for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate it. Happy to see a few familiar faces. They're able to get some of those too. And yeah, thank you so much for your generosity. And let me see here. Oh, and also he says, yeah, not sure why it's showing me as Falcon and not double strike photo as usual. Yeah. So YouTube, a little while back for the live streams, instead of, and I think it's actually for comments too, instead of showing your regular like display name. It's like your original like username or something that it now shows. I don't know. They mess with it because YouTube just loves messing with stuff for no reason and putting everyone in a tailspin. But yeah, it's kind of weird with the usernames now. So but I will refer to you as double strike from here on out. So there's no confusion there. And let me see. And Kevin, thanks for stopping by. Blooper Reel says, when does the embargo lift on the Subaru versions of the electric Toyobarus? I don't know. I wasn't on that trip. I think it's supposed to be this week sometime, though. I think Sophion usually says when the embargoes lift. So if you look on his Instagram on the Redline Reviews, he made a post about those cars, and I think he says when the embargo lifts. I just don't remember because it's not one that's on my radar. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's this week, though. And I'm hoping I get them in for review at some point here in the spring, but don't have them scheduled or anything yet. But I'm excited. Yeah, I mean, because I really loved the Toyota versions, and I don't expect the Subaru versions to be much different. But I love how well the Trail Seeker is priced. So that one especially, I'm going to be excited to kind of promote that and bring awareness to the fact that it's twice as fast as an Outback for the same money. And it's just as capable pretty much as an Outback too. It's like, if you can plug in at home, it's a no-brainer to be like an absolute, like not even up for debate, like easy, unless you have some weird fetish for CVTs and really coarse engines. But aside from that, like, there's no contest. I mean, if you do road trips and you only stop for 5 minutes to pee and otherwise you're, racing to your destination, then, obviously gas is still going to be king. But if you can plan your charge stops and you don't fly by the seat of your pants, yeah, there's no world where I would take an Outback over a Trail Seeker anymore. And let me see. Decepticon says, "What's up, Matt? Hope you had a good weekend." I did, actually. It was a great weekend. I hope you had a good one too. And let me see. Imperial Film says, "Orange shirt doesn't even look like Buzz." So I'm trying to. Maybe there's a joke there I'm missing. I apologize. I don't get the Buzz reference. But yeah, I wish I did. Definitely fill me in. Hopefully, someone can. Cure my ignorance here, so I know what's going on with the orange reference there. But thanks for stopping by, Imperial. And let me see. Decepticon says his spot of the week was a 296 GTB in Rosso Scuderia. Love those things. Very nice. That's a cool spot. Yeah, man. I wish I've never seen one in Pittsburgh. I saw one in Arizona, and I think I've seen one in LA, but and then in Italy whenever I was driving them. But I mean, but I've never seen one in Pittsburgh. I don't know why there's no love for those. I know a lot of people just don't like that it's a V6 and it's got the electrification and stuff, but it's such a good car. It's so fast and it's just fantastic. Anyway, Tumbling Mustard says, interesting spot this week was a green 95 Accord wagon that was slammed and had a rusted hood. Oh, interesting. So was it like a patina kind of thing? That's cool. And thanks for stopping by, Tumbling Mustard. Hope you're doing well. And Tony says, always appreciate your advice. 4 people I know with CX-5s have had some expensive issues. Wow. Man, maybe the CX-5 is starting to slip. It used to be super reliable. I mean, maybe mechanically it still is, but just other things. That's disappointing. I thought maybe my sister just had an oddball, but maybe that's just the way they are. I mean, so 2 of my other neighbors, one doesn't have his CX-5 anymore, but he had one. I don't think he had any issues with it. And then my other neighbor across the street also has a CX-5. His is a little bit older. I think this is like maybe 2018 or something like that. I don't think his has any issues. I think he's over 100,000 miles on it now. Knock on wood for him there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. They always just seem pretty solid to me. And I have an extended family member who has the first gen, and they love it. It's been really good for them, I think, too. So I don't know. Mazda typically is pretty reliable, so it's disappointing if CX-5s are starting to slip because that's their bread and butter, and they need it to be solid. And let me see. Kraken says, yeah, it's been averaging high 20s doing door dashing, and I lost a bit, but lost less because I sold it to a girl who had a Legacy GT and wanted something bigger. Nice. Well, I'm glad it worked out as far as the swap there. And high 20s isn't bad for door dashing, where I'm sure you're doing some idling and sitting around and stuff. So That's pretty good for a CX3. That's awesome. And I hope you're having a blast with it. And Dozier Shaw says, any mechanical reason or advantages for Subaru to use the Boxer engines in their SUVs? Um, well, for them, it's just a heritage thing primarily. Now, I mean, the actual real advantage of Boxer engines is that they lower the center of gravity. So that's why Subarus do have better handling than the average thing that's powered by an inline four. Because you have that lower center of gravity. So just handling is better in Subarus, generally speaking. Now, the way they tune it kind of ruins it sometimes, but you have, inherent advantages there. So that's always been like their calling card is, well, it's really great. And in the sporty stuff like the WX, that was a real advantage over stuff like the Evo. It just because it was really good. I mean, Evo obviously handled amazingly well too. So it's not like it's, a world changing thing, to have that slightly lower center of gravity, but like that is the main reason. But that's going to be one of Subaru's struggles here is, how do they differentiate themselves once we don't have engines anymore? It's going to, I mean, obviously that's one of the reasons why they're happy to, keep going with the hybrids and stuff, anything that still has a gas engine. And actually, I think I don't know if there was a patent about this or if I'm just imagining this. I know Mazda, they are working on they already have in Europe, the rotary range extender, but I believe there was either a patent or some kind of idea floated about Subaru using a small Boxer engine as a range extender. And I think also Scout, maybe I'm full of crap here, but I think the Scout, the Harvester range extender thing that they're doing, I think that is a Boxer engine. I could be wrong on that, but I thought maybe it was. Regardless, like I think Boxer engines, that flat packaging is going to be very beneficial in the future for range extenders and stuff. Because again, it kind of helps you to fit it into different spots where you usually wouldn't be able to fit it in, or so you don't need as tall of a space. If you want to have something that still resembles a flat, skateboard kind of profile like an EV, you don't want to change the packaging of your trunk area or wherever you end up putting this engine. So I think that there is still a future for Boxer engines. Maybe not forever, but I could see for the next 15 years, there still being, until we get to a fully electrified, fully electric, without range extenders kind of thing. But I think as long as the range extenders kind of linger, through the 2030s and stuff, I think that it's going to be, it could be an advantage for Subaru there too. But, the whole idea of their symmetrical all-wheel drive, which a mechanical all-wheel drive, that goes away when you go to electric powertrains too. So it's like they're losing their all-wheel drive advantage. They're losing, the Boxer engine advantage. I mean, for Subaru buyers, if they're used to a lower center of gravity, you're feeling very much at home in an EV where you have, again, that low center of gravity thanks to the battery pack. So there's that. But yeah, Subaru is going to be one of those companies where, how do you make things exciting? And this is like Ferrari, they're working on their new electric thing, and it's like they're struggling with the same thing, as is everyone who's, especially companies that have made their name on their engines. They're really the ones that are going to be in the toughest spot, once that's not a differentiator anymore. And Kraken says, got it from a dealer this time, no mom and pop dealer, had it listed for 13, told him I'll cut the check if they do 12, and they did it. Nice. $4,000 for the Outback. Girl made it home safely with the Outback. That's great. And it sounds like a pretty solid deal. If it's, been super well maintained and everything for the CX3, that's awesome. And so, congrats on a nice, easy deal too. And Tumbling Mustard says, the Toyota videos of late had me thinking, where do you stand on corporate styling? Their whole lineup is looking pretty samey these days. I agree. It is very much copy and paste. I mean, right now, I don't mind it because it's still pretty fresh to me and it looks good in my opinion. But it's not super distinctive. I think with the BZs, I give them a little bit more of a pass because especially like the way that they're choosing to play BZ Woodland is it's, an extension of the BZ line. So having an extension of that styling, at least their mentality is consistent, and okay, you were saying this is part of the BZ family, so it's going to look the same as the other BZ. To me, it holds up for that one at least. Do I wish that they were a little more creative and, we're like Hyundai with having every single vehicle be different? Yes, I think that's more exciting and more interesting for sure. And I guess the other thing too that I can say though is I'm just thankful that it's not hideous. Because there are so many other brands where it's just they do take a risk or they don't take a risk and everything looks terrible with the small, medium, large or whatever. But like, yeah, to me, like, I think the Toyotas look pretty good. It is going to get a little boring, and I think, we'll see how. I mean, I guess we're kind of already seeing with the new Highlander how that's going to kind of evolve a little bit, for a different body style and stuff. And we'll see, what they have up their sleeves for refreshes and stuff down the road for these. But yeah, it is getting a little too common because even in the past with Toyotas, there was always a little more differentiation. And the fact that, we have something that essentially is the same with Prius, it sounds like Corolla, based on the concepts and stuff, it's going to be fairly similar too. And if everything goes to that, even I was talking to some journalists on the Highlander reveal, and some of them were like, we can't, like, having this same styling language, like some of them didn't think it translated very well into the Highlander. I think it actually looks fine personally. I don't know about you guys, but it's just like that's kind of one of the limitations too with this small, medium, large kind of thing is like when you just take the aspect ratio and stretch it essentially and make it fit these different shapes, it for some people it doesn't work great, and so yeah, but personally I'm okay with it for now. I'm sure I'll get bored of it, pretty quickly here. But I think it looks pretty sharp. I actually, in some ways, looking at the electric Toyotas this week, there's certain advantages to the Subaru styling. There's certain advantages to the Toyota. I think they both kind of have their own character in a way, and I do like both of them kind of equally. But I think the Toyota is a little more angular and a little more just futuristic looking, I guess. But yeah, I love them all. They all look great, all drive great, I'm sure. And yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes over for Toyota, especially because they're dirt cheap with the incentives already. $5,000 off their advertising. So be interesting to be just sitting back with my popcorn and watching how the sales do this year for that. But I think it may actually have a chance of success here. For success. And Lancelot says, let me put it this way. I was born a few months before Jaws came out. Nice. Well, I don't even recall the year Jaws came out, but yeah. So you're probably a little bit older than me there, at least. Lancelot. So yeah, I hope it's a good birthday though, nonetheless. And Kraken says people complained how underpowered the CX3s are. I think they're super zippy and eager. They aren't hot rods, but they are spunky. I could use another gear or two, but it's fine enough for me as a daily. Yeah, I mean that was the one thing. I mean, even to this day, I remember about CX3 was very quick with the throttle response, and it was eager. And I think especially for around town urban driving, which is what that car was designed for, it's great. Yeah. It's just, once you're on a long stretch, merging onto a highway or something where it's like, all right, well, we're standing on this gas pedal and we might as well get comfortable here because we're going to be standing on it a good while longer to get to our desired speed. But yeah, no, it's fun, especially around town. I'm sure it's great. And Kraken also says, I don't have the Active Sense package in mind, which isn't a huge deal. Never had a car with a HUD, and nor have I had a car that had swiveling headlights that work low and high beams. My Tucson was low only. Yeah. Well, the HUD in the CX3 was also like those silly little like plexiglass panel that like popped up. It just felt like you're wearing like a pair of bifocals or something. I didn't love how Mazda did the head display anyway. So you're probably better off not having that. So no loss there. And Tumbling Mustard says, I also love the movie Bullet. The on-foot chase through the hospital is so tense. Yeah, that's also really good. I mean, yeah, I guess I won't spoil it about, how high the stakes are for that part of it. But yeah, I mean, there's so many good parts in that movie, in my opinion. And just, yeah, I mean, he's running through the San Francisco, an active airport. I mean, they still had stuff set up for the movie, but like, it's actually him running around when there's planes and he's like feet away from planes that are taxiing. And, I mean, Steve McQueen was the real deal. He was, I mean, just awesome with doing all of his own stunts for the most part. I mean, Bullet, he didn't do everything. I think he would have done everything, but he had his one of his longtime buddies who was also a stuntman do some of this stuff, but he did a lot of it. And a lot of that, on foot stuff he did too. I mean, just, yeah, awesome guy. And let me see. That's what it says. From what I understand, the tire squealing in the TV show The Dukes of Hazzard are from the movie Bullet. Interesting. So like the sound effects or something. I watched Dukes of Hazzard a long time ago, like as a kid, but I haven't watched it in probably 25 years. It's interesting. I'll have to compare because now, I mean, the sound effects from Bullet are burned into my brain, so I can totally, if I ever pull up a clip of Dukes of Hazzard, I can probably pick it out if that is actually true. So that's a fun fact. I appreciate you sharing that, Lancelot. And HPIL Clip says, "Hey Matt, always good to see you live. Thanks for stopping by." He says, "My spots of the week were a Charger Daytona. I still don't see a whole lot. Yeah, I don't see too many either, but I do see a few. Yeah, and I was even whenever I was in California here last week, saw a few. I guess now it was technically the week before, but yeah, it's there's a few of them out there for sure. I think I can't remember. I think they did like almost 10,000 sales last year. And I mean a lot of that's because they're dirt cheap leases there, towards the end. But yeah, I still think it's pretty good as long as they get the bugs fixed with it. I love Charger Daytona still, and especially if you can get them for $200 a month, like some people were at the end there. It's a phenomenal bargain. And Lancelot says because the closest Ferrari dealer is 3 hours from you. Yeah, there's probably some of that as far as why I don't see a whole lot of Ferraris. Same goes for Aston Martin. If you want to get your Aston Martin serviced from a dealer, you got to go to Cleveland, which is 2 hours away too. So there's some of that. Yeah, but I see it, but I see more McLarens than I see Ferraris. And I think the closest McLaren dealer is in Philly, which is 5 hours away. Maybe there's the one in DC is like 4 hours, but like I think McLaren's even, just as bad as Ferrari. And I still see more McLarens, maybe just because they're cheaper. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly some of that. The servicing's a pain, and I mean, for a lot of those people though, I mean, it'd be nice to just stroll over to your local, dealer. But most of these guys, at least the ones that I've, encountered, and the friends I used to have in the exotic car world, like they had Ferraris, and like to service them, they put them in a trailer and, ship them off to the dealer anyway. They're not going to sit around and wait for a car to be serviced or something like that because they're busy people, and, time is very valuable money for them, so you have someone come pick it up at your house, take it away, and you have everything handled for you. So I don't know how much of that is an issue. Actually, and I take that back. Yeah, the Ferrari dealer, they do have the one in Columbus. It used to be terrible. I don't know if it still is or not. But so I guess that's an option too. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. It's a shame. I wish we'd have a closer Ferrari dealer because especially in Pittsburgh, there is a decent amount of money now. There's a lot of money coming in to the northern part of Pittsburgh, a lot of tech, a lot of just healthcare. I mean, there's a lot of people that could have Ferraris if they had a more close dealer to work with. But anyway, so let me see. So we got Falcon says Audi service says they're discontinuing the Q8 electric due to issues. My wife is thinking of going to the Q6 e-tron. Thoughts? If not the Q6, what do you think would be equivalent? I think Q6 is great. I mean, I don't think it's quite equivalent. It's not quite as big. It's not quite as heavy. It's not quite as substantial as Q8. I mean, the Q8, they're only discontinuing Q8, I think, because they're just closing that factory was what pretty sure that's the reason. That's one of the smallest little factories, and they just are nixing that because they're just having to cut costs left and right at Volkswagen Group. So I don't think it's because the Q8 is bad. I mean, it's been around long enough. I think they've sorted it out pretty well. So I don't think you should have to worry necessarily. Double strike, but I think Q6 is pretty good though too. I like it a lot. I had the SQ6 e-tron for a week. It was pretty good. I hate how it does the automatic predictive braking, and unless you're in sport mode or you like override it with a paddle, I don't remember if there's a way to like actually turn it off, but I couldn't figure out a way to do it. And so every time I'd be driving, it would be like auto braking for me, and that drove me crazy. Assuming there's a way to turn that off for good and not be bothered by that, I couldn't recommend Q6 is great. But yeah, if you don't need to get out of your Q8, I'd stick with it if you like it, because they are really, to me, it's still smoother. Still, it is that little bit of a step up, I think, luxury wise, versus Q6 e-tron is essentially, electric Q5. as far as packaging, build quality, materials, all that. I think Q8 is still a step above. So yeah, but I mean, if you're not minding giving up all that stuff, I think, it should be good. And let me see here. Lancelot says it seems like Subaru's boxer engines are getting as bad as the Mazda rotary. I mean, I think it's just that they have never really improved the boxer much. They've kind of been happy to phone it in for the most part and carry it over generation after generation after generation. So I think it's more just like them just either being content with it, or my argument would be kind of lazy with it. It's enough to get by on, and they just say, yeah, sure, people love it. We're getting these, consumer reports, things saying that we're the most reliable brand, which is definitely not true in my experience. But, there's all that. And so I think that's why it's like, well, what's the point in trying to change it? Rotaries are worse for sure with the oil consumption, I think. But yeah, the boxers are not great once you get over 100,000 miles. But the weird thing is, like, I mean, a prime example of this, I mean, Porsche basically, I think they're called flat, motors, but it's still basically, boxer engines. And Porsches are super reliable, and like they're also, very highly regarded brand. But I mean, like 911s, you maintain those things well. They don't seem to have the same issues Subarus do, or maybe they do, and I'm just not enough into the Porsche world and the older Porsche world to know. But I'm pretty sure 911s are a lot better. So I think Porsche shows that you can refine this tech and make it just as good or better than any other engine tech if you bother with trying. And Porsche does, and Subaru doesn't, I think, is kind of the takeaway that I've seen, at least. And Danny says, hello, only got to drive yesterday. Only rare spot was a 98 Grand Cherokee 5.9 Limited. Nice. Well, cool spot. And thanks for stopping by, Danny. Hope you're doing well. And V. Mitchell says, Scout has been mum about anything with the range extender. From what I've been hearing, they might be pushing back one model year for overall rollout. I heard that. We actually talked about that on Wednesday, but then I mean, maybe you're more plugged in with the Scout community than I am, but I've read that, well, I did read that Scout pushed back on that and said, no, we're still on pace to start, churning out stuff here, I believe, early 2027. Or I think just 2027 in general was all they've ever guaranteed. But they said the factory is progressing on time. The cars are progressing on time. So official PR word, at least, is there is no issue. Everything's still on schedule. And again, with the range extender, this is why I was shocked whenever I heard the initial report, which again sounds like it turned out to be false, because with the range extender, there's no worries for them. Like, if it were only EV, sure, maybe hold out, for a year or two, try and get as close as you can to 2029 and hope for fuel economy regulations to kick back in. But if you're, doing the range extender, like, especially if they're launching with that at the same time or first, you're going to have no issues. Like, people are going to, be happy with the range extender. And there's not going to be any of those electric holdups, really. And so, yeah, I think it should be all right for them, hopefully. And Yavinder, thanks for stopping by. He says, hey, Matt, do you think luxury performance sedans like the RS5s and M3s should stop focusing on horsepower and instead focus on lightweight, good handling cars instead? Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, that is what they should do. Because, I mean, everyone was talking about the new RS5 this week, and, people are just crapping bricks over it. Just like, I mean, and I get it. So I think that the problem is, especially, it makes sense for Europe. And there's just this disconnect now where things that make sense, and we're going to see a lot of this for the rest of the 2020s, things that Europe either must do or things that make sense for the European market, which is their home market. Like, that's who they're engineering these cars for. Yes, the US market is huge, but like, they're a German company building stuff for Germans first and foremost, and other, European countries, and, also very much incorporating Americans and, the rest of the world as well. But like, the difference is that is where they need to go, is the plug-in hybrid route, because there's all of these European cities that are going to be having these zero emission zones where they're actually going to enforce, electric only operation. And you need to have that plug-in hybrid thing with having real range to get through these city centers, so that, if you are an executive that can afford one of these things, you're going into the city, say you're driving into Munich or something, and you need to, okay, well, I'm now in a zero emission zone. You kick on the EV mode, and you're, cruising. That's also why a lot of these European, especially the European plug-in hybrids, have DC fast charging, because if you happen to do only exclusively, driving in those zones, you're going to need to top up fast. Otherwise in America here, I frown. I actually like judged anyone who uses a fast charger with a plug-in hybrid, because you're taking a charging space away from someone who actually might need it in their EV. But in Europe, like that's why like the Mercedes in Europe all do that, and we'll have that here for our plug-in hybrid Mercedes as well, where like that's something that's going to be very important. So like all these things that don't make sense for us, it's like they make sense for them. And this is why Lamborghini Ruelto has a plug, even though it's a plug that's literally in the front trunk, and it's like a complete afterthought. But like these things all need to have at least a little bit of electric range to eke through these areas. And because it's not a thing yet, I think some places were targeting. I mean, maybe like places like Norway and stuff have already introduced this. But I think that a lot of the other European city centers, I think target was 2030. I don't know how things stand with everything there in each country and how they're doing it. But like that's something that is going to happen, and they want to future-proof these cars so that a 5-year-old RS5 doesn't plummet in value because they're like, well, I can't drive into the city center because it's always running the gas engine. And it's going to be a complete deal breaker. So I think they're having to future proof these things, and this is why it's important to have these regulations that are very much set in stone and stuff you can engineer for and bank on, and not have things flip every 4 years. And so thankfully Europe, they do seem to have more of that stability. So they're saying, okay, well, we're doing this now. Everyone's going to give us crap for it, but they'll be thanking us in 5 years whenever they can drive through the city center in their electric mode. But that's why M5 has it. That's why, all these things most likely are going to be having that kind of a component. Some of the things too, like that's been one of the big exemptions with, I think, with the 2035, end of new gas stuff in Europe. There was, two caveats. One was, I believe, the e-fuels is one of the exemptions. If you're running e-fuels, which that's another thing they're working on now, is trying to engineer a system that can actually detect e-fuels. Because the problem with e-fuels is that it actually has the same chemical signature as regular gasoline, because it's still basically just regular gasoline. It's just the way that it's generated. It's the E component of it, but it's just regular gas pretty much. And so, they're actually trying to engineer a way to have a visual identifier in the gas that doesn't harm the combustion process or anything, but is a signifier that the car can sense and detect, okay, this is the right thing, I'm allowed to start now. Because otherwise that's the 2035 rule, is like, this engine should not run if it's not actually verified e-fuels, which you can see how that, if that sensor goes bad, you'll see a bunch of stranded cars and stuff in the 2050s or whatever. But like, there's all these things. And so these are all the things they're working on for Europe. And, I think I'm just thankful we're getting the RS5, because, that's something they don't have to send to us. And especially if it doesn't make a lot of sense for our market, if everyone's just going to be, up in arms about how heavy it is and stuff, but like, that's what they need to do. BMW is kind of doing it a little bit of a different approach, because it sounds like they're just going to have, the regular gas M3, and then they're going to have the fully electric M3. And so if you're going to be going into city centers in Europe in the future, then it's just like, well, I have to buy the electric one. I think they're assuming eventually everyone will switch over to that one anyway, but they're just doing this gas one, as kind of a stopgap in the meantime for that. But yes, if all that stuff in Europe wasn't a thing, or if they had the luxury and the money to engineer versions just for us, then yeah, strip all that stuff out, do a gas version, and make it as light as you can. I mean, that's, a bunch of people are just mad about that in general. They're like, it should have just been regular gas, or it should have just been regular electric, and both would have been lighter than stuffing both into the same car. Again, it's just, and I kind of wish that car companies did a better job of explaining this stuff, so they didn't take all this heat. I mean, I'm sure there'd still be people pissed off, but like, if people understood that it's like, this is the reason why. But I think the other exemption, sorry, I got sidetracked with the e-fuels thing. The other exemption, I believe, for the 2035 cutoff is if you have enough electric range. Like if it's a very high range extender, I believe you can still get away with that. I know also California, at least originally, but I will see again how everything gets completely wrecked or not. But California's plan also, they were planning a 2035 cutoff. That was one of their exemptions, was if it's a plug-in hybrid that has more than 50 miles of electric range, it's good. You can keep selling it. And like this RS5, I mean, at least it's the European rating, but it's rated for 52 miles. But, like the RAV4 Primes or the RAV4 plug-in hybrid, I think that does over 50 miles of electric range now. So like even a 2026 RAV4 plug-in hybrid would qualify as a new car sale in California if they even still were able to keep those rules in 2035. And so I think that's what everyone's engineering for, was okay, we can do that. And we'll put a battery pack in that's big enough to give us over 50 miles of range. And then we have the gas engine still. So, people are still happy that they have the best of both worlds there, but it does just make everything heavier. But it's just, you're not going to get that from the Europeans. I mean, maybe that's an opportunity for the American brands. If everyone's saying, okay, well, the Europeans have to do this, companies like the American companies that can engineer just for America, I think like Cadillac right now, if I were Cadillac, I would be licking my lips and be in the corner going like this, because like new CT5V Blackwing, if they were to do something like that, which sounds like there may be a new generation. I feel like that was confirmed, but not, I don't know. Or there's also going to be an electric sedan, I think, we saw spied. But regardless, like Blackwing could just dominate the market because, if they're smart, do completely the same powertrain you currently have, just put it in a fresh body, update the chassis a little bit, call it good. It'll be 1,000 pounds or more lighter than everything else. And they'll just walk away with the market, in America, and they, won't be able to sell that in Europe or whatever, but they'll be okay with that. Same thing, I think, to a lesser extent, if, like Chevy wants to get in, the rumors of maybe Camaro coming in as a, cheaper Blackwing, essentially, if you just have it be a four-door, but that's kind of the way forward, maybe for Camaro. It could be another thing of, okay, we have this light, non-hybridized, four-door sports sedan. I think, that would be, again, everyone in America would be like, yay. And it would be the one thing that'd be an exclusive thing that they're doing that no one else is doing, because they can, have that luxury of doing that for a while here. And I think if also the Mustang 4, which I think is what they're planning on calling the four-door gas Mustang, the sedan thing, if that ever does see the light of day, I think that also, is going to clean up once everyone gets, turned off by the heavier European stuff. It'll be like crazy, but like a Mustang 4 is going to be, way lighter than an RS5 or something like that. But yeah, it is absolutely just because of, the needs of Europe, and that's why RS5 is the way it is, for anyone that isn't aware of all that stuff. Anyway, Danny says, under a month until I turn 18. I turn 18 on the 18th of March. That's fun. I know, it's my golden birthday. Two cool cars made in March of 2008 M3 sedan and Audi S5, the S5 with the V8. Yeah, those are great. I remember when they both came out. I was working at a BMW Audi Porsche dealer in 2008 when both those cars were brand new, fresh. I was peeling the plastic off of them and unwrapping them when they were fresh off the truck. Good times. And also crazy that's that's, man, 18 years ago too. Jeez. That makes me feel very old. Anyway, so Theodore says, is buying a rental car a good idea, like from Avis? It depends. So the thing about rental cars is it's kind of a blessing and a curse. So the good part of rental cars is they've been maintained pretty well, typically, because they're staying up on that and they want to make sure that their investment, the cars, they keep running and they're running well and all that. So they usually don't skimp on maintenance. So that's good. The problem is the car gets beaten by every single person that drives it. There's no faster car than a rental car. It's like they live a hard life. So they're maintained well, but they live a hard life. So you could argue both ways. If you don't mind wear and tear, I'd say mechanically a rental car should be pretty solid, but you might have other things that might be a little rougher, or even like suspension components, things like that, where if a car has been really, if someone was racing it across a dirt road or whatever and just didn't give a crap, you might have ball joints, things like that maybe would wear a little faster and might be due for service earlier than a regular one that's been babied. But as far as engine, oil changes, basic stuff like that, I think it'd probably be a little bit better than the average vehicle, especially if you're buying it off, if you're buying a vehicle that you don't know the maintenance history on, if it's from a private owner or something, you have no idea how well that person actually treated the car. And that's kind of the nice thing about corporate leases and rental cars and stuff, is typically they stick to the maintenance plans and all that. And Corvette says, well, Matt, my comments keep disappearing on me for some reason, so I don't know if you can see them, but we'll be able to move the wall on my dad's side of the garage so he can get whatever he wants. Nice. Yeah, sorry if your other comments didn't come up. I just haven't seen them until now. He says without having to worry about the car size limit anymore. Nice. Well, hopefully that opens up maybe some new options for his car shopping journey here, and hope he finds something he loves. Danny says, here's two rare cars made in March of 08, Porsche Boxster RS60 Spider, 1960 made, and the 08 Mustang Bullet. Yep. And I remember when those Boxster RSs came in too. I didn't love them back then. They were kind of, I don't know, I just never loved that generation of Boxster styling, especially the refresh. But yeah, very rare and cool for sure. Let me see here. So Dave says, hey, Matt, what were your favorite car-centered TV shows? So as a kid, I loved Speed Racer. I watched Speed Racer a ton. I'd like run home from school to catch it, on time. So I love Speed Racer. And also as a kid, there was a show called NASCAR Racers, which was I think maybe did 2 seasons, but I was obsessed with that show back in the day. If anyone also is a 90s kid and remembers that. Otherwise, and also like Batman, the animated series, the Batmobile back then, that was kind of the Batman I grew up on. And then as far as car-centered TV shows, beyond that, I think that's, because I don't know of any others. I mean, because as I got older, it just turned into like the movies, Fast and Furious and stuff like that. So I don't think there's any other car shows I can think of. There's got to be something that I'm just blanking on. I feel like there is something else, but as of right now, I can't think of any others. Because once I got into like teenager age, it was mostly just video games and movies, and I didn't watch a whole lot of TV shows really in that era of my life. I was also working a lot, so that didn't provide me a lot of time to watch stuff either. But I don't think there's any other I didn't watch Knight Rider. Knight Rider is a little bit before my time, so I never really watched that. Trying to think of other car shows. I don't know. That's probably about it. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know. Maybe there's some other stuff that can jog my memory here. But I think that's all of it. I see also Lancelot says, Dukes of Hazzard, which I watched a little bit as a kid. A-Team, I never watched that. That was again, before my time as well. And Underdog, thank you so much for a very generous super chat. I really appreciate that. And I'm just thank you so much for your generosity once again. I very, very much appreciate that. So he says, hey, Matt, had my NB Miata for a week. It's so good. I could daily this car. Don't understand why people say it's not a daily. Cargo space, I have a little pickup truck for that. Road noise, I drive a work van, and that has a lot of road noise. Yeah, I mean, and it all comes down to what your reference point is, but if you got all the bases covered with the other stuff there. And no, I mean, MBs are great. And, the thing also about especially older cars is it's always kind of funny because we've come a long way with car tech and all that. But like people don't think about the fact that like an NB Miata, like there was zillions of them everywhere and tons of people daily drove them and were fine daily driving them. And it was completely normal and acceptable, and people lived with that just fine. I mean, you can make that argument for anything the past 100 years, but it all comes down to what you're willing to live with and what you're okay with and what you're used to. But I mean, anything really can be a fine daily driver. I mean, there's a few exceptions, like, it'd be kind of hard in Ariel Atom or something like that. But, for the vast majority of cars, it's completely fine. And it's going to be comfortable enough. And there's no issues, as far as actual real problems. You can be nitpicky and want something that's smooth or quiet or whatever. But yeah, no, NBs are great. I love them. I'm so glad you're enjoying yours so much. And yeah, it's such a phenomenal value for just for the money of how much fun you have with those things. So I'm glad you're still loving it, and thank you again so much for the generous super chat. I really appreciate it. And let me see, where were we here? So let me see. Danny says my weirdest spot was a Jeep Wagoneer S. Really weird because it must have been bought with the tariffs on it. Wagoneer S, where are those built? I thought they were built. Wagoneer S is, I think, built in Michigan. Or no, that's built in Canada, right? I think it's one of so there's a bunch of stuff that did get brought over early, because I know, I did the review of the Wagoneer S in January of 2025. So, they didn't announce tariffs till April, so I think a bunch of stuff probably got shipped in like normal, before everything, went crazy. So, you got at least 3 months there of, them being shipped in before there was any holdups there. And I believe they still kept shipping stuff in. I mean, a lot of these companies, they can't just stop. You have a plan, you take the losses and you write it off at the end of the year or whatever, and it's just like that's not an option. Just be like, okay, well, this thing's been out for 3 months, and now because of tariffs, we can't bring it in and just like completely kill it. You bring them in, and you hope the tariff thing doesn't last forever. You just hope for things to chill out. There's a little bit of hope that maybe some of the tariff stuff's going to relax here. We'll see how these legal challenges and stuff end up playing out. But I think that's what these car companies have been hoping all along, is like, okay, well, hopefully this situation improves at some point, and we don't have to, because you don't want to derail your entire 5-year product plan over the whims of a 4-year presidential term. It's just, you got to just get through it and stick to the plan. And that's kind of all they can really do, because it just takes too long. You can't react fast enough without bankrupting your company. Maybe you'll go bankrupt either way, but at least you're guaranteed to do it if you just kill a car you just launched 3 months prior. So they don't have much of a choice. But let me see. Yeah, Lancelot says it's tire squealing on dirt. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just don't recall the sound effects in Dukes of Hazzard. I'll have to go back. That's funny. And let me see. And yeah, Danny loves Knight Rider as well. And Vishal says, is the new Mazda CX-5 hybrid design, or is the new hybrid the Mazda design or Toyota design? From my understanding, it's going to be a Toyota, or it's going to be a Mazda designed system for CX-5 hybrid. We don't know anything about it still until 2027 is when that's launching. But that's, my understanding is it's going to be a Mazda designed system. The Toyota thing was just, a stopgap here with the CX-50, but Mazda likes doing things their way, as seen with the plug-in hybrid stuff, in the CX-70 and the CX-90. So yeah, that's the plan. I believe it's going to be a Mazda thing. Completely, which also I have to commend. Again, I don't know where they're getting the money from, between coming up with a rear-wheel drive 6-cylinder platform, and then now doing their own hybrid system, and they also did their own plug-in hybrid with this, the CX-79. I don't know what their balance sheet looks like. I don't know how that works for them based on how everyone else acts like they can't afford to do anything. But I'm glad that Mazda's doing it somehow. And Dave says, I have the Dukes series on disc and watch it with the kids. My 11-year-old son likes Daisy's Yellow Roadrunner more than the General Lee. Nice. And he says he also loves the A-Team. That's awesome. And Theodore says, Steve McQueen was awesome. He trained with Bruce Lee. Yeah, there's so many things. I could go on all night about Steve McQueen. But yeah, really a stand-up guy. Especially in Hollywood at that time. Yeah, there was that was not a given. I mean, he was the real deal, I think. And let me see here. Lancelot says, I have Duke's A-Team, Knight Rider, and Street Hawk all on DVD. Nice. I don't know Street Hawk. I don't know why. Maybe, I just don't even recall hearing about that show. Let me see here. Falcon says, was asking about the e-tron since her rear motor just failed. Oh, gotcha. Damn, that sucks. And required complete replacement at $3,000. it's luckily covered by warranty. Well, I'm glad that was covered at least, but wow. So yeah, I guess if you want to make sure you get something different once the warranty's up, totally understand based on that. Man, I'm surprised they had that issue. That's unfortunate. Glad it was covered under warranty though. It's man, that's why the power of warranties. There's always used vehicles that are always very tempting and appealing, and we'll see what happens once the Fiat lease is done. But man, I really, especially for my anxiety levels with reliability and stuff, like having a warranty is very important to me. I don't think I'd do very well, like especially if it's a car you don't know about the reliability, like to not have a warranty on it, which also might be part of why I maybe don't keep the Fiat forever. We'll see what happens, but yeah, warranties are great. And AGR says, "Hi Matt, nice to see you. What do you think of keeping old cars forever?" Funny, I just mentioned that, but I have a 2010 SVT Raptor, and I don't feel like I want to sell anytime soon. Well, that's great. Yeah, if you are happy with what you have, and especially something like that, kind of a more old school thing, you don't have a whole lot of stuff to break. So I mean, that's probably super reliable. Yeah, if you're happy with it, why sell? There's no reason. I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping a car forever. I think it's great because you bond with it. You know the car inside and out. It's just, and if you're happy, I think the contentment. If you have contentment, that can be elusive, for a lot of people, and especially in the car world. So if you're able to just be like, I'm content with my car, cherish that as long as you can, and absolutely don't look at the grass being greener on the other side. Just enjoy what you have, love what you have, until you have a reason to not love it anymore, or you're ready to move on. But yeah, don't let anyone tell you need to get anything soon or different or anything like that, especially with interest rates. I guess they're incentivized right now, but generally not great still, and all that. So I still don't know if it's a great time to buy anyway. I mean, it might be, yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens with the RAM shortages, later this year or early next year. But for now, there's no reason to rush out and buy anything anyway. So I think you're good to keep it and enjoy it. And Timothy says the new CX-5 is probably a flop. Well, I am bound by embargo on CX-5 until tomorrow, so stay tuned for my thoughts on that tomorrow. And then we'll talk more on Wednesday about CX-5. And let me see. I see Quiet Meadow agrees with Timothy's sentiment there. And Dave says, right now, Chevy Canada is offering 0% financing and 10 to 20 grand off sticker for the 25 Z06. Do you think that's enough to offset the usual Corvette depreciation? Absolutely. I mean, Corvettes do depreciate, but they don't depreciate that fast. Like, I mean, a lot of people are still like hoping C8s depreciate more for like the regular Stingray, and they're still pretty stubbornly, I think, still over 50 grand. I think actually a lot of them are mostly over 60 still. And that's a car that, again, at least in 2020, launched at 60 grand starting. Obviously, most were optioned beyond that. But yeah, I don't know why they're discounting Z06s so much, to be completely honest. But yeah, like sign me up for that. If I had the money, oh man, I'd love a Z06. I mean, I think, Jack from Savage Geese had, a little bit of an issue with his, with the transmission. So, I mean, maybe there's some kinks to work out. Again, warranty, extended warranty, especially if you're saving 10 or 20 grand off sticker, put some of that savings towards, an extended warranty for sure, especially with that motor. It's kind of an unknown too. So that's definitely a car you want a warranty for if you're going to be driving it and you don't have unlimited money. But I think that's a phenomenal car at sticker price, and 10 to 20 grand off. Say no more. If I had the money, yeah, I'd be right there with money in hand at my my Chevrolet dealer. Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm assuming E-Ray is going to be discounted even more because those are actually like, less desirable. Z06 to me, I think is still actually desirable, which is why I could see E-Ray getting discounted that much, but seeing Z06 get discounted that much is crazy. And Danny says, yeah, Google says about the CX-5 hybrid that it's confirmed for release. Yeah, 27. Yep. Yeah, Sky Active Z with the new hybrid. Yep, that's it. And let me see. Yeah, he's going over the other stuff there too. And Lance also says to bring back the Chevy SS. Yeah, I know. I wish they would, but Holden now doesn't do anything anymore. I don't think they're even in operation, right? I think they got shut down, which was so crappy for the Australian market. I feel bad for them. And Ford's Australian operations kind of got thrown out the window too. So it's a shame, but yes, I'd love to see something like that come back. Although they shouldn't call it the SS again because it just was weak marketing. They should have called it Chevelle or something. So hopefully, if they do ever do something like that again, they either just call it Camaro or they properly use an actual memorable name and some good styling to go along with it too. And let me see here. Danny says Cadillac is confirmed to get a new generation ICE CT5. Potential V model is rumored. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, especially with the V8s being confirmed for GM still for a long while and stuff. Yeah, there's no doubt that it's going to get a V model if they are doing that. But I hadn't heard that it was totally confirmed. But I mean, I think I heard somewhere that it is going to get a new generation. I feel like I reported on that a long time ago, but it's foggy because so much stuff all the time. But anyway, you see, B. Mitchell says, I'll argue that the rental cars are well maintained line all day long. Somewhere between a quarter to a third of the rentals I've had greet me with an oil change overdue message. Oh, okay. Well, then in that case, yeah, maybe they aren't maintained well. I was under the impression that they were maintained well, but clearly you have a different experience. So fair enough. Maybe that is not the case. If that's the case, then yeah, I wouldn't buy a rental car. If the maintenance isn't being done on time in some of them and it's living a hard life, it's just, yeah, unless there's a huge discount over, getting something comparable from a regular dealer, which you might get a little discount, but if it's not enormous, then you're going to have more headaches down the road. So you're better off just getting one that's more well maintained. And Abby says, mentioned it to the attendants when I turned it in, and I agreed with a shrug at best. Wow. All right. That's crazy because you would think like if they are running these motors, they would fail at a higher rate. And then that, means you got cars off the road. And like the whole thing with rental car agencies is like these cars need to be on the road. So that's surprising that they're skimping on that. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. And yeah, I'd glad to see everyone else appreciating the big super chat there from Underdog as well. Last name, Kumar says, my 2018 manual OG M2 is coming tomorrow. Been dreaming about it for over 5 years and finally pulled the trigger on a low mileage Long Beach Blue. That's awesome. And great generation too. That's a great car. You bought well, and congrats on reaching that dream after over 5 years of dreaming for that. And that's the kind of stuff where the average car purchase can be very exciting, but whenever it's something you've been aiming for and working for and dreaming for, I mean, there's really no better payoff. I kind of was able to experience that with the Bullet. The same kind of thing of like I always wanted this. I've always been dreaming of this, hoping this would happen, and then it happened, and thankfully I was able to be in the position to buy it whenever it was new, and that. Getting that dream car, it is really special. So I hope you enjoy it to the most. Just, drive the wheels off of it. Get as much enjoyment out of it as you can, because that's a special feeling. And so congrats, and just huge accomplishment too. So I hope you feel very proud of that. And Danny says, here's a crazy thing I learned about the Ford Tempo. They offered a diesel engine in the Tempo, a Mazda 2-liter NA diesel, 52 horsepower, 82 pound-feet of torque, made from 84 to 86. Interesting. I don't know if I knew about the Tempo diesel. That's cool. I'm sure my parents wish they would have gone for that one instead of the regular gas engine, because the diesel maybe would have been more reliable, especially if it came from Mazda. I don't know. But that's interesting. There's some weird diesel options. Like when I was, in the junkyard, there was that Lincoln Mark 7. B. Mitchell's gonna be, over there. I can hear him gnashing his teeth with me, quoting the generation of Lincoln Mark, whatever. But they, had a diesel. I showed one. I came across one in the junkyard last year. And I was like, what? There's a diesel Lincoln sitting here? Like, it was kind of crazy, alongside the Turbo Mercury, which I also didn't know was a thing, the Mercury version of the Thunderbird Coupe. But anyway, fun little experimental things they did in the 80s there with the Americans. Let me see here. Lance West says Street Hawk is about a motorcycle cop riding a special armored bike ran by the feds. Interesting. Never heard of that. That's crazy. And also, a Double Strike says, I don't feel ashamed to say I own the Street Hawk, Viper, and Knight Rider DVD sets. Hell yeah. Nice. That's awesome. And Danny says the Tempo Diesel is only with a 5-speed manual. Nice. That's cool. I mean, makes sense if it's kind of a more foreign kind of thing they brought over. And, manuals are very common back in the 80s still, too. And he also says the 92 Ford offered the Tempo GLS, was the sportier Tempo model. Had the 3-liter Vulcan V6 with a factory 5-speed. Interesting. I don't know if I actually knew about that one either. Because wasn't 92 the last year for Tempo? Because I think 93 is when it went to Contour, right? I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's when it switched. Or was it 94? Maybe 95. I don't know. Something around there. Thanks for sharing the factoids with us there, Danny. And Mr. 705 says, if you were put in charge of Porsche, what would you change to make them profitable again? More models or less? I gotta think about this one. I don't know. Porsche's kind of in a tough spot right now. I mean, I think I would try to expand manual availability for one with the 911. I mean, I think they're doing it probably right. It's one of those things where it's hard unless you have the numbers to, say for sure, because it might sound like, hey, like why don't we have a manual in every 911 as an option at least? But I'm sure they crunched the numbers and they made sense of it in the 911T and in the GT3s and stuff, but weren't able to make the case in the other ones, which is why they dropped them. But, I feel like because they're probably, I don't know how many people are leaving on the sidelines, but I'm sure there are some 911 buyers that either don't have GT3 money or don't want something that intense who, don't like just 911T and, maybe would like to have a Targa. I believe 911T, does it come in convertible? I think it does. But or just have like a base bare bones 911. I think that crowd would really like a manual without having to pay the premium for the T. And then there's the S, of course, GTS. Obviously, with GTS a little bit trickier with a hybrid, so they kind of have their hands tied there. Aside from that, I mean, I don't think there's really much more they can do because, again, like if your focus is the European market, as it should be, they're doing the right thing with the electric stuff because that's the direction that everyone is headed outside of America, pretty much. And I mean, even America, we still are, regardless of how much, they want to disincentivize it. But, so I think that they're doing the right thing. I think the only thing I will say is I think to help them it wouldn't help them be more profitable, but it would help them to at least improve their sales is just, they got to get closer to cost parity with gas as far as, and I'm hoping they get there with the battery technology improvements over the next few years and stuff. But, I think that's the biggest problem with like Macan electric is it's just a lot more expensive than a gas Macan. And, especially whenever you realize that like regular Macan lessees, sure, they're paying the Porsche premium and they're okay with a little bit of that. But then you tell them it's $100,000 for a regular Macan, like that is way too small of a car to be charging $100,000 for and not have it be an actual sports car. Like there's just, I mean, they lease pretty well. So, it's not like most people aren't actually paying that MSRP, but like, I think that they just need to kind of get the pricing in check a little bit on the stuff where you don't have blank check buyers. The 911s and stuff, sure, charge whatever you want, laugh all the way to the bank on that. But as far as, the stuff where pricing actually matters, I think maybe it would hurt their profitability short term, but if you're long term, you're getting people to sign on for this electric thing that you need to get them to sign on for, and you're able to just kind of drum up some interest. I think that they need to get more aggressive with that. I also feel like they need to get more aggressive with their incentives, again, for that business lease kind of crowd, because that especially for the electric stuff, there's a big business for that, but it's got to be, at a cheap enough price. And, Porsche likes to act like, they're on this high horse, and they don't need to do discounts and stuff. But and I mean, I think they do a little bit, for the regular stuff, but like they need to like more heavily incentivize the less desirable stuff and try and, just work a little bit to sell people. I think Porsche, they'd rather be in the position of, oh, well, you come to us and you have to be on a wait list and you pay MSRP and all this stuff. But like that's great, and I guess for profitability again on the stuff where you can get away with it, that's great. But I think they assumed they could do that for the entire brand. And I think a base Macan buyer is a very different mindset than, any of the sports cars or any of that stuff, or even Panamera and stuff, for example. I mean, like, you don't have that leverage. I think they always thought they still had that leverage. Like, it's still just a Macan. It's a nicer Q5. I mean, they did a lot of changes and stuff, and now the electric one's different. But even that shares a platform with the Q6 e-tron. So it's like, they can't get away with that kind of. So I would get realistic with pricing for Macan and Cayenne electrics, and then other than that, I really don't think there's much else they can do. That's the thing that sucks, is like there's not a whole lot else. I mean, it sounds like they're trying to figure out what to do with Boxster and Cayman. And they're, it sounds like, I don't know if the rumors are accurate, but it sounds like they're considering just completely scrapping the electric version in the 11th hour here and just trying. But then now the giant headache is, how do we stuff a gas engine into this thing that was engineered as an electric vehicle? And then that's just, it just, doesn't match up typically. So it's, they're in a very tough position with that. I think the positive thing about Porsche is, worst case scenario, because I am very much sometimes a worst case scenario kind of mindset person. They'll be fine if all they're reduced to at some point down the road is 911s. They'll still, be a phenomenal car company, and they'll have very good profitability if that's it, because the other stuff's really dragging down the profitability. So I think if worst case scenario they have to go more niche and they have to go smaller, I don't think they want that, obviously, and especially for the company, it's all about growing more. But I think they kind of they're finding the limits of that, especially if you're going to charge top dollar. So it's either okay, budge on the price, or you got to cut back your volumes and cut back your models, and maybe give up on doing regular cars and just be a sports car company again. I mean, Cayenne kept the company from bankruptcy way back when, but now if it's like the appeal is cars are getting more of a higher dollar kind of item anyway, and they're becoming more of a luxury, then maybe you're not a brand for the masses anymore, or the upper middle class masses or whatever, and just leave that to Audi, leave that to the other brands, and just do sports cars. I don't know, but I hope that things work out for them. I'm sure there's other just operational inefficiencies and other things that are just dragging stuff down. But I think it's so crazy. So many car companies have such a terrible read on demand and a terrible read on like volumes. Like they overproduce, and then they're like, oh no one's buying these things. And like, some of that, again, there's a long supply chain, as we saw in the COVID era. Like you can't, you got to put stuff in the pipeline because it takes 90 days or whatever to, from the factory to come over on a boat. It's a whole long process. So like, these aren't things, again, you can pivot super fast, but like, if I were running the volume side of the Porsche stuff, and I was looking at, okay, do we turn up production? Do we turn down production? I would have my pulse on like daily sales for these brands. Like, okay, like the second we start to see things slow down a little bit, dial back production and be super hyper conservative, because you'd be much better having a supply shortage than have oversupply, and then you have to cut those profits because you're discounting these cars because they're sitting and stuff. So I think trying to optimize and fine tune and very much tweak supply as much as you possibly can, I think could help too, and that helps you to realize when something is not going over well quicker. So it's not like, crap, we got an entire year's worth of Macans now, what do we do with them? And then they have a giant hole they got to dig themselves out of. Instead, they could have stopped the bleeding way sooner, possibly. Again, I don't know, it's hard to judge, but that's my best attempt at at trying to make sense of the Porsche situation, again, with my very limited knowledge of all that and, what the actual data says for them. But great question. And let me see here. So Vishal says rentals are given the bare minimum maintenance. All right, so I was completely wrong then. Yes, they'll get oil changes and maybe tire rotations, but everything else is a gamble. Yeah. Maybe Mitchell says what you're forgetting about rentals is that they only have them for about 2 years or 30,000 miles. If it breaks, then they get the PO'd customer another one and send it to Mannheim or Odessa. Yeah, I guess that is what ends up happening. I guess people are used to misery with rental cars as far as disappointing experiences. So if they get a crappy rental car that leaves them stranded, it's, I guess not insanely out of the ordinary for them. I don't know. But yeah, fair enough. I mean, I know at least in the COVID era, people, they were hanging on to rental cars longer. Maybe that has since gone back to business as usual with, I feel like I've seen rental cars with higher miles than 30,000 though, but maybe not. Maybe that's just the cutoff they typically try and stick to. And Michelle says, when's the next junkyard video? Hopefully soon. I was hoping to go out the beginning of this week and film, but unfortunately I actually reached out to the junkyard, people that pull apart, and they said there was still a little bit of ice on the ground. They're like, you might not want to go out and be sliding around on the ice. I said fair enough, and we got still just bad weather coming in these waves here. So it's just I'm finding again, this whole year's been a learning process with starting these videos up, that it's kind of hard to do in the winter months. And if this turns out to be something that I actually want to keep going on a consistent basis and actually has a solid future, I may need to be doing a couple of filming trips to some warmer junkyards to get content, over the winter months. Because it seems like I can get away with it until early January, and then like middle of January to March, probably, I'm not going to be able to really film much. So, yeah, I don't know when the next junkyard video will be. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But I just, you have to wait and see how that all plays out. And let me see. That one other guy says CarSpot possibly saw my old 0466 Accord Coupe after selling it over 5 years ago. Wow. Well, I maybe mean V6. Yeah, that's awesome. It's always fun if you see your old car around. I thought one time I had seen one of my old cars. I'm not sure if it actually was or not. But yeah, it's one of those things. I guess it's kind of good though if you don't see your old car, especially if you're attached to it, because then it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You don't have to, see it around town and all that all the time, which might be a little hard. Maybe for some people it'd be fun, but yeah, all of the cars I've ever sold pretty much have gone elsewhere, and never see them again. And V. Mitchell says, yep, Mark 7. Oh, I got it right. I'm learning slowly but surely. Was the one with the BMW Steyr diesel. They also put them in the Continental in those years when it was on the Fox platform. Okay, gotcha. Interesting. Well, thanks for the fact check there on that. And Danny says, when the Green Hawk drives video titled 10 Diesel Cars America Completely Forgot About. Watch that if you want to learn more about rare diesels in the States. Cool. Yeah, thanks for the recommendation. B. Mitchell says, I used to own an 88 Tempo GLS, and that was the Garden Variety 2.3. Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I thought my parents, maybe theirs was just a GL. I don't remember. Theirs was an 88, and it definitely just had, the 2.3. He said the sportiest thing about it was the seats and the bigger alloy wheels. Gotcha. Okay, well, we had steel wheels in ours, so maybe ours is just the regular GL. Because those hubcaps did pop off. And let me see. Dozier says, bought it at 95, contoured new in 95. Manual with a 6-cylinder, fairly sporty for a 4-door then. That's awesome. Yeah, wow, that's cool. You had one back then. I'm curious how it treated you. Hopefully it was a good experience and lasted, I guess, as long as an American car from the mid-90s can be expected to last. And Danny says, here's another rare diesel sold in the States, the 81 to 83 Nissan Maxima diesel. This car used the 2.8 liter LD28 inline 6 diesel, making 80 horsepower, either 5-speed manual or 4-speed automatic with overdrive. Interesting. Yeah. It's funny how everyone was just, trying to figure out, what the future was. And it's a shame that Dieselgate screwed everything up, because I still think diesels are great technology, just so efficient. And yeah, it's a shame that that all got derailed. But Danny says, yeah, 0 to 60, 12.3 seconds, quarter mile in 19 seconds. Yeah, that's they're definitely not fast, but so efficient. Danny also says, also the last model year for the Tempo was 94. 95 was when it replaced it. Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for the fact check on that too. And Antonio says, car shows are boring now. No sedans, sports cars, coupes, hatchback, and station wagons. Everything is an SUV or a truck. And I know the designs are bored. Designers are bored. They should also show more concepts. What do you think, Matt? Yeah, I mean the regional auto shows used to bring in, excuse me, a couple of the concept cars from the auto show circuit, from the bigger shows, I guess I should say. I don't go to the regional ones because I'm very fortunate that I've already basically been in most, if not all, of the stuff that's on the show floor there. So it's not something that has any value for me. I've only gone to the Pittsburgh Auto Show if a family member or a friend's shopping for a car and they want me to come along and hang out and chat with them while they sit and stuff or whatever. But yeah, it sounds like, though, I was just hearing a report this week that it sounds like those regional auto shows, though, like have phenomenal attendance. And it's like, even if auto shows are dead for media people like myself that report on new reveals, for people who just want to like sit in cars and like figure out what they want and stuff, it sounds like they're like really doing well, which I'm actually very happy to see, because I think that's how auto shows started, and I think that's really important for them to continue to be that opportunity for people to sit in new cars and experience new cars and see what's out there without a salesman being annoying. And so that's yeah, but I agree. I mean, it depends on what brands show up at your regional show. Like our Pittsburgh one, there's a lot of brands that don't even participate, or the dealers don't participate. But yeah, I mean, there are a decent amount of sports cars, coupes, not as ton of sedans, but there are some sedans, obviously. Hatches, starting to come back. We got like the K4 hatch from Kia coming back here. We got the Civic hatch everyone loves. Corolla hatch is still hanging on now, for a little bit longer, hopefully. And even wagons starting to come back a little bit with Trail Seeker and BZ Woodland. You have Crown Signia, and so I don't know. I think things are kind of looking up as far as not everything being an SUV these days. But I can see a lot of these shows, especially depending on where you're at in the country. I can totally see a lot of these regional shows just stocking the SUVs and trucks, and assuming that's what most people want to see, and that's probably the right bet anyway. But yeah, but it sounds like at least people are showing up for regional auto shows, which is great. And Vishal says, what would you do if you were in charge of Acura? I bet there's a lot more to unpack here compared to Porsche. Yes, that is a good assumption. For Acura, I mean, I would say, they're in such a bad position now that I would have preferred, if I was running it, to be in the decision-making process a few years back before they made the decisions they made with RDX and stuff. But if I was walking in on the job tomorrow, I think the first thing I'd do is I'd try. I mean, I know they said they can't get suppliers, but I would really try my hardest to get some kind of RDX continuing for the next 2 years. Get someone to make it, send it off to Magna Steyr. They're going to have some opening, production capacity now that Supra and Z4 are going away this year. Send the castings and stuff down to them and have them build those RDXs in Germany or wherever, like, or Austria, I think, is Magna Steyr. Like, get desperate. Like, they need to have RDX in the running, and have them on dealer showrooms. So I would say, yeah, okay, the supplier that's building RDX can't build it anymore. Take it anywhere else in the world. Pay a tariff if you have to, whatever. Just keep RDX in production. That would be priority number one, because that's their breadwinner, that and MDX. Otherwise, we know MDX hybrid's coming. I think that's important. So that's good that that's happening. But there's all the other low-hanging fruit with Acura, and we discussed this in past lives. Any Honda, put an Acura badge on if there isn't one already. So, that's kind of an ADX. Obviously, ADX needs to have the hybrid powertrain. And I don't know why it doesn't already, but so ADX hybrid would be another top priority. I think an Acura version of the Passport is an easy moneymaker. Call it, what is it? Is the SLX was the Rodeo and Isuzu kind of based Acura thing, I think back in the day, whatever it was called, but an Acura version of the Passport. What else could we do? I mean, maybe Acura version of Ridgeline is too far of a leap, but so you got MDX, and then beyond that, I mean, I still think doing an Accord based, even if you have it front wheel drive, which I mean, you should have an all wheel drive version, but like even just if you can't justify TLX anymore, take Accord, literally just make it a nicer Accord, and give it the Acura nose, whatever. But I think, if you can keep the all-wheel drive system and put that in there, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to have performance like the TLX did. Just literally a nicer Accord. Do that. And again, just, maybe they're just companies, maybe just a lot of these enthusiasts that are in these companies that are running them that are just like, oh, we can't just do badge engineering because people are going to hate us for it. But like the enthusiasts who pay attention will hate you for it. But the regular people don't know. This is why ADX is so popular already, because most people have no clue it's based on HRV. Now, obviously, there's some real significant changes there. It's not like it's just an HRV with a different grill, but like, that shows the power of that strategy and that they can do it well. Also, I think ADX was actually really well executed. And so I think that's all, everything Honda makes, put an Acura badge on it, make a nicer version. And I think that would really help with, just expanding the lineup and just also helping with their profits once again, and spreading out those costs of developing this stuff for, other versions of these things. I think that was kind of what helped Lexus to get off the ground and be so strong, because for so long, I mean, now I'd say they're, the least, in common with Toyota is they've been in a long time with a lot of this new stuff, but there is still very much like NX still sells a ton, and NX is a nicer RAV4. There's nothing wrong with that. It sells well. People like it. And if you do it well enough, it's convincing, and you're not, people aren't feeling like they're getting shortchanged or taken advantage of. So like, I think that would be all I would do for Acura. It doesn't have to be hard. I mean, I'm sure that's easier said than done, but like, I'm not asking them to, come out with a new NSX tomorrow or, do some crazy S2000 revival or something. Like that stuff's all hard. I get it, forget it. But like, they can easily do the ADX kind of formula for everything else and make some good money, I think. So that one other guy said the 6.6 is the V6 6MT. Gotcha. Okay. Nice. Yeah, that's a cool car, that combo. Let me see. Big Red says I'm Baby Keem. Maybe I don't know who that is, but maybe someone else can explain if you want. And Underdog also says, is there any vehicle still using an old platform? Didn't the Dodge Charger use the old Mercedes E-Class platform before latest generation? Yep, absolutely. I don't know if there's anything else that's that old or that kind of a stretch, because that was really kind of an out of the ordinary thing even, for that generation of the Charger. I don't think there is anything else like that. I could be wrong. I feel like there must be something, but I can't recall anything off the top of my head that's that dated or that disconnected. Everything else is pretty modern these days. I don't think I can't think of anything. Pretty sure everything else is, fairly. I mean, there's some stuff you could argue, it goes back a ways. Current Accord is based on the old one. Current Camry is based on the old one. So there's some of that, but nothing that goes super. I guess you could kind of say, it's a little bit of a stretch, but the BRZ and the GR86 are, still have a lot in common with the old generation as far as chassis goes. And that old chassis goes back to the second generation of the IS. I think it had some Lexus roots that were pretty dated, but that's a real stretch because the platform has changed so much. I mean, you could say IS in its current form. I mean, it's the same IS they've had since 2015, but that's still not, quite as old as the 90s of the Mercedes E-Class platform there. Oh, that other guy, that's a good suggestion. He says the Chevy Express. That's yeah. Okay, you won the answer to that question there. Yeah, that's the best answer. Chevy Express is undefeated. I'm pretty sure because that is really old. And there's something about I just you can go on the configurator for the Chevy Express, which is hilarious. That's even a thing. But there's something about it. I can't remember. There's some weird option where it's like it's the only vehicle in the world that still offers. I can't remember what it is though. But yeah, that is ancient. Maybe it's no, I don't know. Something that's kind of like very like 90s about it, but I can't remember what it is. Maybe cruise control is an option, something like that. Anyway, yeah, Chevy Express is probably gonna be the oldest, I'm sure. And fun question. Thanks for asking, Underdog. And one other guy says Nissan Z, Frontier, Durango. Yeah, those are also good ones. I mean, Durango, where does that? I mean, that comes from. I thought the current generation Durango was kind of a newer thing, or at least was for that generation. Like, I don't think it's based on the last generation that much. I mean, there's probably some commonality that's carried over, but I feel like that was actually like a thorough new generation. Frontier 2, that's another one where it's like kind of not. It's like, and same with Z, like their underpinnings do date back to their prior generations. But there were a lot of structural reinforcements and like I mean I remember there's an interview with the engineer of Frontier, and he was like, yeah, like there's a lot that's carried over because we just didn't need to change those parts because it's like why reinvent the wheel if those parts are fine. But he's like some of the stuff that was actually important to change, whether it's for safety or for handling or whatever, like the things that needed to be updated were updated. So to me, that's it really gets into the gray area of what is actually an all new platform and what isn't. Like, at the end of the day, you're still starting with a steel frame, and it's like it, there's only so many ways to form those bars or to change them so that it's different. But it's like so I don't know. I think it's a little tricky. But with the E-Class thing, like I just feel like it sounded like there wasn't a ton of changes. And even that, I mean, went back to what 07, so it was just ancient by the time 2023 came along for Charger at the end there. So yeah, but I mean, same with Z. Yeah, that all dates back to 350Z initially, but again, lots of changes along the way. So I don't think it's super recognizable as the old car quite as much. I mean, maybe you could say the same for Charger with the E-Class too. I mean, they did change stuff, but I just don't know the extent of those changes very much. That's something I need to know more about. And Bill Oliver says, storm outside, 23 Civic Si in the garage, Matt live, life is good. Well, I'm glad that me being live can be a little snippet of that happiness for you there. And hope you stay safe there with the storm, and hope you weather it well. Yeah, hope everyone that's supposed to get hit with this blizzard. I'm curious where you're at. I know there's someone else earlier that said they're from New York and getting some snow. So hopefully you guys are good. Thankfully, we only have about an inch or so here. So we got kind of missed that whole thing. But one last crazy storm here for winter, hopefully, and then it'll be hopefully done. We'll see. But it's a shame that it's been I feel like it's been a pretty intense winter for a lot of people. So yeah, just the way it's going here. And let me see. Oldest platform being used. As far as Underdog asking what is maybe the oldest, I'd say it's got to be that Chevy Express probably at this point. That other guy says no market for an accurate version of the Accord, possibly, but I think there would be a market. I mean, Lexus ES clearly demonstrates that, so I think that there would be. And I think that was the problem with TLX. I think TLX actually got too fancy. If TLX was always just a nicer Accord, they would have been fine. And I think when it was a nicer Accord for the prior generation, it sold better. And it was, just a little more boxier, a little more practical. I mean, I love, the last generation of the TLX. It looked phenomenal. It drove great, way better than most people give it credit for, in my opinion. But the back seat was as tight as a Corolla pretty much. I mean, it just was not great. So, they said, oh, we'll go crazy with the styling. And then everything else seemed like an afterthought. And yeah, it's just a shame that that's the way that, they had to make those sacrifices. So I think it would actually do well as an Accord, version. And I see Vishal says they could bring back the Legend name for the Accord sedan. Yeah, I agree. That would be great. And Lancelot says, my goal is one day get an Acura Legend and put Of Zelda on the plate. That's fun. I'm sure that's something someone has done before. I don't know. But yeah, I had a buddy back in the days of being a detailer who had a Legend. He had a giant subwoofer in the back, and it was white. I think it was 94, maybe Acura Legend with the V6 there. He loved that thing, and it was really cool car. And we would fly in that thing sometimes. But he never did the Of Zelda plate. I think that would have been a little too nerdy for him because he was too cool for school. But yeah, that'd be very fun to put that plate on, on the back. And that one other guy said, heavily revised platform is still the OG platform in my book. Fair enough. Yeah. I think it's also, some companies aren't super forthcoming about, they'll say it's a new platform, but, it's not till you dig in where it actually, it's like, oh, this is actually carryover. So, it's one of those things where sometimes you have enough data to actually say that. Otherwise, sometimes there's things that are probably badged as new that aren't actually that new. It's just because, again, it's like, well, why would we re-engineer parts that already work and are already fine, and it's stuff that no one's going to notice anyway? I can see the business case for that. And let me see. Vishal says the Touring Accord is a good basis already for an Acura version. Really has potential. Yeah. And maybe Honda just thought, well, there's no point because Accord is already so nice, and it's that's kind of the struggle with a lot of these luxury brands is, okay, well, every mainstream thing already has ventilated seats, already has a heated steering wheel. I guess you can go a little further. They could put massage seats, in an Acura version. They could, do a pano roof and, again, same kind of things they did with ADX and stuff. You could certainly do, better stereo, stuff like that. But so I guess there's still potential there. But yeah, it's I'd love to talk to Honda and Acura management about this stuff. Like really, I was in a round. Well, it wasn't a round table, but I was in a conference call with them. That's when I did that video earlier this year about the new stuff they have coming out for Honda and Acura. But there's not really, there's a Q&A session, but it's not like a Q&A session where I can like grill them in an interview and be like, why are you not doing this stuff in front of the 100 other journalists that are in these things. But it would be nice. I don't get invited on Honda and Acura events anymore, but if I ever do go on one ever again, I need to just like corner an executive and be like, look, like, please give me good reasons for why this stuff isn't happening. Like, because these aren't stupid people. Like they must have thought of all this stuff already. So there's got to be a good reason. But man, I'd love to know why, because I don't see it. Anyway, so let me see. One other guy agrees that the Legend name should come back. And he says, love marketers saying all new to a lightly facelifted car. Yeah, Ford is one of the worst with that. Like the S650 Mustang, they said it was all new. There's just so many cars like that where it's just like, why do you think this works? Like, why? Like everyone knows this. There's some of these things, where it's a light refresh, and it's like you're selling this car to people that are upgrading from their last generation, or they're upgrading from the current one they have. Their 3-year lease is done, whatever the case is. Like they're gonna tell, like especially like Mustang buyers. That was the one that really drove me crazy because it's like all new 7th generation, and then it's like it's the same midsection. Everything's the same. The door panels are the same. The interior bits are the same. Same armrest, same cup holder. And again, they're selling this car to S550 buyers who know better, who have been in this interior for the past 10 years. They know this is the same door panel. They know this is the same cup holder arrangement. This is the same, like, you're not fooling anyone. So, like, it just looks bad. And I don't know. Yeah. Well, Ford has all kinds of questionable decisions. And they're another company where, I would love to talk to the PR people and be like, what's the game plan here? Like, why are we doing this? But just bad marketing, just straight up bad. Again, and these aren't stupid people that run these companies typically. So it's just like, there's got to be some echo chamber effect or some higher up executive that just will not hear any opposing viewpoints or something like that. That's just having the rest of the people in the company be like, okay, have it your way. And just, I don't know. Cause it's like, these are common sense things where it just baffles me that this kind of stuff gets passed through and approved and everything else. And confirmation, thank you so much for a super chat. They says, have you ever driven a first gen Oldsmobile Aurora? No, I've never driven any generation Aurora. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever actually driven an Oldsmobile in general. There's nothing. Yeah, there's not. I've never reviewed one. There's nothing to really. Yeah, I've never had an opportunity. I mean, there was some cool stuff in the '90s and stuff that would have been fun, but no, I've never driven anything from Oldsmobile really, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, thank you for the super chat. And he says heresy. Yeah, I mean that there are some blind spots that I have. There's certain things that I have not ever set foot in that I probably should for some someday to have well-rounded opinion, I suppose. But yeah. And let me see here. So where are we here? Michelle says Acura is like Chrysler in a way, being down to a few models left. Crazy that they couldn't get the suppliers to keep the RDX going. It's a crucial segment. Yeah, it is crazy. And yeah, we'll see how it goes for Acura, but I think they're going to have a really rough time until the new RDX comes online. And Antonio says, I wanted to go to school for car design, but it was so expensive, but have a lot of beautiful designs for Chrysler, GM, and Ford. I just wish they can see them. I mean, the great way to do that, I've seen, that they do really enjoy doing some of these like car designer contests where sometimes I guess a lot of times they do it with just like people in design school, but sometimes they will have like contests of like, hey, send us your thoughts on what the future Chrysler should look like or something like that. And you can send in stuff like that. But I've seen a lot of people also get a lot of recognition just posting their stuff on Instagram and tagging the designers, like for example, if you want to see, have Chrysler do stuff, tag, Ralph Gilles and have him, be tagged because he actually is very active and, has done all kinds of these legendary designs, for Mopar here in the past, 20 years now at this point. So, I mean, I know, if you're an artist, you don't like giving your stuff away for free, but, if you want to get that so that they see them, tag them, tag Jim Farley on, or whoever, look up who the designer is for these vehicles, that you're wanting to, get the attention of. Well, you never know. Even if you didn't go to design school, even, you never know if they really love your stuff. Yeah, I don't know if that's, an absolute necessity, maybe if you really have talent and you have, they like your vision and your direction, I don't think it'd be out of the realm of possibility for them to bring you on or at least have you as a consultant or, contracted out for ideas or something like that. You never know. So I think first step, put it out online and see if you can get some traction on it and, build up that base. There's a bunch of people on Instagram that are they do just future car designs or sketches and things like that. And have pretty good following. So I think that's kind of the way to get the eye of the car companies. And let me see that one other guy. Thank you so much for a super chat. They're asking here a current European market reasonably priced new car you'd want to drive and review. Jimny, Cyberster, 500e Abarth for me. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, Jimny would be fun. That one's not really up my alley. I love the Abarth 500e. That'd be really fun to try out. Alpine, I'd love to do some Alpines. The A110 would be great. I'd love to do a Fiat Panda. I mean, they sell a zillion of them. It's like, one of the most popular cars in Europe that for some reason Fiat has said, oh, we can't sell it in America. I don't know why. Then they're going to sell other things that are less practical and less, sales potential than that. But I mean, Fiat Panda is legendary. I've never been in one. I'd love that. I'd love the new Renault 5 and the 5 turbo thing, which is, all electric now. All that seems like a phenomenal riot. And it's like the Nissan Micra, which is based on the same thing. That could be really cool to try out. other stuff. I'd love to try the Volkswagen Polo GTI. Because I did actually drive a Polo in Europe as a rental car back when I went to the Geneva Auto Show in 2011, I think it was, 2012. Yeah, I drove a Polo all over Europe. That was really fun. So I'd love to try the new one, and also like the Volkswagen Up GTI, the tiny little city car thing they had a couple years back. That'd be phenomenal to drive and review. What else? Yeah, any of those little hot hatches. I'm excited for the ID1 and ID2 from Volkswagen, like the Polo electric, and those types of little things will be fun. Trying to think of others. I'm sure there's more. Yeah, I mean, those are probably all the main ones, though. I'd love to try the Golf GTE, which is a plug-in hybrid GTI, essentially, they have in Europe. I think that's still a thing. I know it was for a while. But that seems like really cool. It's like, faster. It's got the plug-in hybrid thing, and obviously a little more weight than a regular GTI, but I think that'd be kind of a fun combo, like an instant electric GTI, but still having, the gas propulsion there as well. And what else? This is a fun question. I'm trying to think of other things. Yeah, there's probably a few other little small Fiats and stuff that'd be fun. I'm excited for us to get the Topolino here. I mean, it's gonna be basically a glorified golf cart, but that'll be fun. I don't know. I saw one of my other journalist buddies was like asking a Stellantis rep, like, please send out a Topolino press car, which would be basically impossible because I don't know how much range it is, like 50 miles of range or something. Like they would never be able to get it to Pittsburgh unless they put it on a flatbed. But that, I mean, I don't even think, because that's not going to pass safety regulations. So I think it's going to be kind of limited with how they roll that out. But anyway, that would be a fun one too. And there's probably some other, like a bunch of the little Peugeots would be fun. All that kind of stuff. Yeah. Aston Martin Signet would be fun just for the hilarity of it being, a Toyota IQ, Scion IQ thing that has the Aston Martin stuff. That's probably, I'll just cut it off there so I don't keep going too long here. But I think those are probably all the top ones. All the little hot hatches we don't get, I also, another final one, the Focus ST, the last generation of the Focus ST, we never got here in the States. It was the 3-cylinder turbo. But that new generation Focus that we never got, that would have been great. And also the Fiesta, actually. So yeah, Fiesta ST, Focus ST, the last generation, both of those we missed out on. I'm sure they're phenomenal still. Definitely would, have a high ranking for me as far as cars I'd want to, drive. So yeah, that's probably all of them. Plenty of stuff there if I ever do a European tour to do reviews. I'd have no shortage of fun stuff. I'm sure that each video would get like 10 views each, but I'd have a blast, that's for sure, with that kind of stuff. So fun question. Thanks for asking. Thank you for the super chat. And also I see confirmations saying a Dacia Duster, yeah, or a Dacia Sandero. Good news, everyone, as James May would say. So yeah, that's probably all of them. And let me see. So B Mitchell says the oldest platform is the Ford E-Series, and Colline cutaway van dates back to 92. Is the E-Series still in production? I thought that had been phased out with the Transit, the bigger Transits and stuff. Do they still make E-Series? I didn't think they did. If they do, that's impressive. Then yeah, you're right. That would definitely take the cake there. I'm now going to look that up because I don't think it's on the configurator, at least. Maybe it's only for commercial purchases now. Maybe it always was mostly, I don't know. Anyway, and I'm gonna have to look into that, or someone else can enlighten me here in the comments. And the other guy says, shout out also to last gen 2.0T 6MT Accord, only went 2 model years but drove very well. Tested it immediately after a Civic Type R. Nice. Yeah, I remember the only thing that car needed was a limited slip diff. That was really the big shortcoming, but other than that, yeah, seemed really cool. It's a shame it didn't last longer. Vishal says, in this case, if Honda won't add all-wheel drive to an Accord, an Acura version could add the all-wheel drive and the panel roof. Yeah, absolutely. And B Mitchell says, to be fair, you can also call the E Series a truck now. Yeah, so I guess that's but I mean still an old platform, so I think that definitely qualifies. And Lancelot says almost 2 hours, no Geo Corolla mentions. Drink. Yep, well, fair enough. Cheers to the Geo Corolla. And Michelle says Honda's afraid of Matt calling them out. That's why they stopped inviting him. I don't know. I mean, I don't think Honda has anything against me because they still send me press cars. So I'm assuming if I was, blacklisted with them and they wouldn't, send me anything. So I don't think it's, it's but yeah, I don't know. And I reached out because I told them no, because for a little bit there, they were sending out invites in like the peak of COVID. And I'm like, I'm not going to your event. Like, I'm sheltering and I'm not gonna be going out flying all over the world, in the middle of COVID. So like some people, though they didn't stop, they just kept traveling. And I think that Honda thought I was like, done doing press trips. So they kind of knocked me off the list there. But I reached out to them multiple times, once everything settled down with COVID. And I was like, hey, I'm back to traveling, let me know when the next event is. And I'd even hear, because again, I talk to everyone that, is also reviewing cars. I know when all the Honda events are, and so I catch wind of something and say, hey, I heard there's an event coming up next month. Like, have any space for an extra person or anything like that? I did that a couple of times. I don't like groveling like that. So, I don't want to pester them, but, so I did it a couple of times. They never got me on anything. I'm like, all right, because again, I get them as press cars, and thankfully now with the dealer connections too, like I don't need to go on any of these trips. And honestly, most of the time I'd rather not anyway, unless it's a really unique experience that I can't replicate at home. But it's really, and I keep, even like this Toyota event this week, as enjoyable as that was, and like I said, that one I don't regret because going to Paul Walker's Hidden Tree House was like super cool. If you missed me talking about that on the last live, let me know and I'll do a brief summary for those who missed that if you guys want to hear that again. But like that, like I don't regret doing that, but like those cars all underperformed. I mean, as far as the views goes, the Highlander thing did terrible views. The BZ Woodland didn't really. It's okay, but not great. CHR didn't do great. Like the amount of time that I spent, that was between the two of them. It was 1, 2, 3, technically 4 days if we include travel. 4 days out of my schedule to do 3 cars that all got 5,000 views for now. I mean, some of the Toyota stuff has taken off after the fact once they actually start hitting dealers, people start searching for them. So just because it's a bust initially doesn't mean it's going to forever be a waste of time. Some of these things I'm like, wow, I'm actually glad I went on that now because a year later it's doing great views or something. The BZ review from last year, strangely, like did nothing again initially and then like started doing really well here early this year. So we'll see what happens. But like right now, like that trip, just 4 days, I could have done more rants. I could have done, more press cards. I could have done a bunch of stuff and not had the aggravation of flying. I mean, it's very nice when you're on these trips. I mean, the room was phenomenal. The location was amazing. I got to see a new part of California I hadn't experienced before. So I'm very grateful for those things. But again, if I'm approaching this as a business, it's just, there's better ways to spend time, as glamorous and fun as it might be sometimes. But let me see. Let me see. Mr. 705 says, if you could pick any brand to run, what brand would you pick and what would you expect your salary to be? Well, so it depends on what exact role. If we're talking like chief product planner, I don't know what they make, honestly. I have a general idea of what some of these positions make, but I'm really out of the loop as far as what they even get paid, honestly. So I don't even know because I'm coming from a humble position where I'd probably undersell myself if they were like, "What do you want to make?" I'd be like, and it probably would be too low of a number, honestly. But as far as what brand I would want to run, I don't know. I mean, if it's an easy job, I mean, like it'd be fun to run Porsche, but it's like crap. Like, how do you fix this? But just because again, they make great stuff and it's not paying off. But like, companies where it's an easy lift, would be the Honda, the Subaru, all these other things where it's like, guys, you got easy stuff here to do and you're not doing it. Like, So if I really wanted to like move the needle and make a big difference, it'd probably be those companies that need the help the most, even if they're not companies that I'm the most passionate for. Although, clearly I have a lot of passion, for Honda and Subaru, especially Subaru. So yeah, I'd say, yeah, but I also love Toyota, and I'd love to be part of that team that brings those awesome new sports cars to life, like the GR Corolla. Let's have another drink. And especially as a product planner, you're the one who's making those business cases and trying to plan this stuff out. And I think I'd love to do that for Toyota and keep that heritage alive, keep that amazing legacy going, and ensure there is a new MR2, ensure the Celica is done properly, and ensure a new GRD6 happens, and those types of things. So that would be one that I'd love to do. I also think I really love Mazda and what they're doing, and aside from maybe these little stumbles maybe with reliability, possibly we were talking about with CX-5 earlier. I really am passionate about. I love basically everything that Mazda makes right now. Like I don't think they have a single bad car, and I love again that they're sticking true to themselves with Miata, and they're not bending to the pressure to have 1,000,000 horsepower or do anything they don't want to do with that car. They're sticking to what that car should be, and that's really rare these days. Because the other ones just have had to evolve out of necessity, and they just nope, don't need to. So I'd say it's, my top 5 would probably be, Mazda, Subaru, Honda. I still feel very passionate about Ford, and I think they have a lot of low hanging fruit too, where it's like, why do we not have the Everest here? It's a Ranger that's got a pickup truck bed on the back. Like, why not do that? Chevy would be another one. I think so. That's probably the top 5. Because Ford and Chevy too. Dodge, I don't know. They just drive me crazy sometimes. I'm just, if you guys want to go full off the deep end, like knock yourselves out. But Ford and GM, I actually think there's like some real potential there to like do again easy stuff. Why is there not a Colorado with a cab on the back? Why is there not a Ranger? Why is the Everest not here? Why so many easy things? And so I'd love to try and explore like, why are we not doing this? Like, let's make this happen. Like this would print money. And with Chevy, it'd be like, why do we not have a supercharged V8 Silverado? Take the Blackwing motor, throw it in the Silverado, and call it a day. Literally you can take the ZR2, call it ZR2X or whatever you want to call it. And just, like easy stuff. You pack another 30 grand onto the price of a Silverado ZR2 just for the supercharger, just like Ford does in the Raptor R. Like that's easy money, easy. So like, I don't know. There's just those types of things where, I think especially because I work so hard at this job, if there could be an easy product planning job where I'm like, here you go. And like, lay it all out there. And, I'm sure again, there's more to it as far as why they aren't doing those things, but I'd be like, why are these common sense things not being done? And how can we make that, how can we overcome those challenges? So I'm sure there's again a lot of ignorance there in that assessment. But if there's ever any car executives that watch these, I'm sure they'll probably be pulling their hair out. But yeah, from the armchair product planner standpoint, a lot of easy things here. And confirmation, thank you so much for a super chat. He says opinions on the Lexus LBZ Maurizio RR seems awesome, right? GR Corolla with Lexus stuff on it. I'd love to see that here in the States. And I guess do they get those in Europe? Because otherwise that would qualify under that other guy's super chat as well. But yeah, it seems super cool. Obviously, you have no experience with it personally, but yeah, I would love to have one of those someday. That would be really, really fun. That could be a fun car, maybe if the 25-year rule is still a thing in 25 years or so. Could be a fun one to bring over as a future JDM classic. And we're over the 2-hour mark, I just noticed. So we'll finish up here with the last few comments, and then I'm going to keep on working on my CX-5 video. I still need to edit some of that before the embargo drops tomorrow at noon Eastern time here. But let me see. So last few here. Mr. 705 thinks an accurate version of the Ridgeline could make sense. Yeah, maybe. I still think that's another crazy thing. These car companies haven't tried luxury branded trucks. none of them have. I mean, Lincoln tried, a while back, but I think that would make sense to try again too. And it is really strange they haven't gone for that. But Paul says he's asking also about the next relics. I'm glad a couple of you are missing those and asking about that. I appreciate that. He says, love going back in time with the different models you see. Yeah, it is fun to do that. So I'm hoping once we have some consistently nice weather to get back to a regular schedule of those. The last few, though, weren't super encouraging from a view standpoint. And again, because my time is so limited and I'm so maxed out, those are on a very short leash, I will say. So, I'm going to try them again this spring and see how it goes. And I'm going to see if Pull Apart can maybe, sponsor again to kind of make the financial side a little bit more worthwhile. But like the views need to show signs of growth because it kind of flatlined and kind of averaged out around 5,000 views a video. And it's fun. But again, if I'm only getting 5,000 views, that's, an average, bad performing car review. And I was hoping that the longer duration of the Relics videos would allow them to be better earners, but that doesn't seem to be the case, even though they have, a ton of ad breaks in them. It's just they're not getting, they're not performing money-wise any better. They're really than a car review or anything like that. And they take just as long because a lot of these junkyards aren't in my backyard. So it's an all-day thing. Go out to the junkyard, typically and film it, come back. It usually takes me still, couple hours to edit because they're long videos. Even if it is minimal edits, it's still I'm processing an hour's worth of footage or whatever. And so that's it. It's a lot of work. And again, because of how the rants have done, if I can do a rant in an hour from this seat right here and just blab for 10 minutes, turn it around and upload it an hour later, and that gets the same views, I'm going to do that every time. As much as I love the junkyard stuff or any of these other, ideas for car videos or YouTube videos, if the rants and stuff like that are, going to get the views and they're way easier for me, I'm all about doing stuff that's less work and not more. So, so we'll see, but I do love doing them. And if nothing else, I'll hopefully still at least even do it for fun on the side, just going to the Pittsburgh yard, maybe not going to all the Ohio ones in the future. But we'll see. I'm hoping I can keep it alive. And I hope YouTube is it's so hard to grow anymore. It's just, even with a brand new channel, and that also proves that it's not just this channel or me being, shadow banned or any of these other things. It's really hard on YouTube to break through and do really well these days. So we'll see what happens. But if the next few don't, really perform at least a little bit better, I'm probably gonna have to pull the plug on those, unfortunately. Let me see. Confirmation says, I wish car companies marketed premium sedans more. Yeah, it'd be nice to see more premium sedans for sure. And Danny says, speaking of movie stunts, have you watched the Need for Speed movie? So good. One of my favorites. Yeah, Need for Speed movie is great. I saw it in theaters, actually. Really, I thought it was actually pretty well done. And Underdog says, what's another common brand that you haven't driven? Mercury? Yeah, I don't think I've driven Mercury either. So yeah, that is another one. I had a 2010 Mercury Milan for a short time. It was a good car. That's great. Yeah, I mean, basically a Ford Fusion. They're great. Traded it in for the 13 Mustang GT. Nice. Yeah, Mercury, haven't done, let me think if there's any others quickly. Haven't done Oldsmobile, haven't done Mercury. I don't think I've actually driven a Saturn. Because, yeah, I don't think I've I've ridden in Saturns a couple of times, but I've never actually driven a Saturn. Pretty sure, yeah. Actually, no, I did the Saturn Sky, but aside from the Saturn Sky, never did any of the regular Saturns. So yeah, that's one other one, I guess. Trying to think of other common brands from the past. Yeah, I mean, aside from the Pontiac GTO, I haven't done any other Pontiacs, I don't think. I did the Solstice. So Solstice and GTO, I guess. But none of the regular stuff. Yeah, that's probably all the main ones. Smaller niche things, of course, I haven't done, but that's probably the biggest ones. Let me see. I see BM says hi. Thanks for saying hi and stopping by here. Theodore says, do you think we'd be going back to analog gauges? I'm tired of looking at tablets, especially with the new Mustang GT. I think there's a good chance that analog gauges do make a comeback. And I think that, again, if we see this RAM shortage really get bad, you could see some quickly slapped together analog gauges, possibly to try and work around the, all the screen demands. If RAM really comes at a premium here in the next year or two, you could see a very brief switch back to analog. Now, whether that has staying power or if that's just like a quick thing just to adapt quickly, I don't know. But I think there's a decent chance analog will come back. And if nothing else, I think we'll see more of that with the exotic realm, where I think, again, those buyers really like handcrafted gauges and things like that. And I think it's going to be important. So I think you could see Lamborghini, for example, go back and eventually to analog stuff, maybe, and Ferrari maybe someday. Things like that could head in that direction, I think, someday. And I think with that new Ferrari interior for the EV, there's some stuff that's a little more analog still, but I think it's still mostly screens. I think are the gauges analog in that new Electrica thing or whatever they're calling it? I think, or they call them the Luca, or I can't remember what they call it. What they just came off the name for that new Ferrari electric thing, but I think there's some real gauges in that. I don't know, but so I think they're going to see a little bit more of that in the high end sector first. But let me see. So that other guy says Topolino has got to be coming under that limited production rule like the Morgans. Yeah, probably something like that, I'm guessing. Unless they try and bring it in under whatever proposed legislation may or may not happen with the K-car thing. That's one of the ones where they could actually bring it over. Unlike the other K-cars where it just doesn't make sense to actually bring them over here. But that one maybe could benefit from that. I don't know. Let me see. Theodore says, but you should be honest. That's what's good about you, and give your honest opinion. Don't sugarcoat stuff. Yep, that's what I always do. Always brutally honest, and I'll never change. That's for sure. And I do feel like more and more people hopefully are appreciating that. I actually just got a comment yesterday. Someone was like, "You're now my favorite reviewer because like you really don't like pull any punches." Because they just bought a Crosstrek hybrid and they got terrible fuel economy. Like I just reported, I got in the Crosstrek hybrid this winter. And they're like, this is ridiculous. Like, and they're like, no one else is talking about this, but you're putting them on blast for getting terrible fuel economy in their hybrid. And like, yeah, I mean, that's the fuel economy I got. I'm going to say what I got. Like, even if Subaru hates me for it, like, sorry, like this is underperforming in my week with it. And, yeah, I think that it is though, one of the very fortunate things is I do have those dealer connections that a lot of reviewers don't actually have. And so if they get cut off, they are screwed. I'm not. And that's why I have that extra boldness and that ability to not care as much. So that's why I understand some of my colleagues that, need to sometimes, construct a crap sandwich, as they call it, with a different word. But, like you have to kind of, smooth over the criticisms, make them known still, but don't be quite as brash about it like I am sometimes. But let me see. Last few questions here. Decepticon says gulps down to 5 gallons of Red Bull. Man, all right, you're really taking us up on the GR Corolla drinks there, Decepticon. And Decepticon also enjoys the mug. Yeah, thanks. It has faded. So this used to be really bright. I actually got it at the London Film Museum when they did the first exhibition of all the Bond cars. We did a trip to London in 2018, and back in the good old days when we actually had money to spend on fun trips. Yeah, got this. It's bone china actually, but it's like super thin, which isn't great for a mug because all the heat goes out pretty quick. This is ice cold coffee at this point. But yeah, so that graphic faded in the dishwasher, sadly. But I still love it. And let me see here. Nico, thanks for stopping by. And Confirmation says, lastly, for me, can you explain the various reasons why there is an embargo on reviews for their cars? Mostly it's just about having a level playing field for all the reviewers. Because otherwise, you see this at auto shows, for example. At least auto shows, which I guess this is a relic because it doesn't happen anymore. But it used to be with auto shows, if there wasn't an embargo, you were at the mercy of whoever had the fastest team to post the video the fastest, they got every view because, or most of the views because they were the first. So the idea of an embargo is, okay, everyone dumps their stuff at the same time. It's a level playing field. Everyone has an equal chance for success with their videos. And it also allows the manufacturer on their end to kind of control when this stuff is launched, because they don't want to have a review go live super early and then people get all excited and they show up to the dealer and the dealer says, oh, we're not getting the cars for another 2 months, sorry, or I'll put you on the list. Like, they want to capitalize on that momentum immediately and have a car there in the showroom for someone to pick up and buy, and capitalize on those knee-jerk kind of reactions and those impulse buys. So those are, I think, the two main motivations. And now sometimes an embargo drops way before a car goes into production, or there's like, for example, Highlander isn't going to be online for another year here, pretty much, as far as production, but we showed it off and all that. So that's not always one of the main reasons. It's mostly just, again, there's been reviewers that have complained in the past because, oh, well, there wasn't an embargo. And we're even seeing this now, because sometimes, like some car companies, there's an embargo only on drive impressions, which is why there's already a bunch of CX5 videos out there. People talking about the interior already. People, showing doing full tours just without the drive. I personally just like having a one-stop shop with my videos, which is, probably a bad strategy because, I'm missing out on all these extra views. But, but a lot of people do double uploads of, do a whole tour and then a whole nother review, for that once that drops. But others, they have an embargo on everything. It's like, don't say anything about you being here, or it's, you can say something, but just a little teaser that, hey, there's more coming, and so some of them are more limited than others. And, you can tell there's some where people are like, oh, I wish there was an embargo on everything, or I wish there was a stricter embargo or whatever. But that's the main reason. It's just trying to give us all a level playing field. And B. Mitchell says, as for the Rust Belt videos, I think some of it is that you keep going to the same places. Might need to head more into PA. Yeah, definitely more variety would probably help. I think the thing that I had hoped, because, with any video content that I'm planning on making as a series, it's something where it needs to be formulaic. It needs to be easily repeatable and have easy, fresh content. And I thought that was the beauty of the junkyards is, okay, I figured out they turn over inventory roughly every 6 weeks. Sometimes it's more like 2 months or more. But typically it's like, okay, well, I got, 4 junkyards to go to. If I go to one every 2 weeks, by the time I get back to the one that I did 2 months ago, they've got fresh inventory and you're not seeing anything that's a repeat typically. I mean, in some of the videos, there were a few repeats, and that's not something I want to make a habit of doing, because that would make it more stale. But that's the beauty of them, is they do always turn stuff over, so there should always be new stuff. So yes, I'm in the same place, but it's always new cars. It's new treasure hunting every time. So I hope that would keep it fresh. But I mean, maybe to your point, maybe that is, someone's like, oh, I've already seen the Pittsburgh yard, and especially in other parts of the country, there are junkyards where it's just like someone's old collection of stuff, and they don't actually crush stuff or turn stuff over. So it's like, oh, well, I've already seen that junkyard and nothing's changed. And that's not true. It's always changing. They're always crushing stuff and bringing in new stuff. And so, that's why I had hoped that it didn't matter if I was, as long as I had, enough of a gap there between the last time I was at the yard, that there would at least be new cars, and that'd be fine. But maybe that's not enough. Maybe because if it needs to be me traveling the country, I mean, I'm going to run out of junkyards. It's just, that's not sustainable. So, and a lot of them, again, the further out that I go, the harder it gets to justify it from a, time standpoint. And again, if they were getting 100,000 views a video, sure, I'll go to the ends of the earth if, the money is going to be there. But, I'm not driving to the other side of PA, for the $50 that maybe one of those videos makes or whatever. It just, I'm willing to take a flyer on something every once in a while, but like, again, it just, my time's too valuable to experiment on stuff. If after the first several experiments, it's not growing visibly and noticeably, then it's like, okay, well, this is, I'm going to have to play it safe with these and hope that maybe they get more recognition someday, but that's probably not a great solution either. So yeah, we'll see what happens. And it's also kind of like that with the rants and the other things where I'm at the mercy of what I can get my hands on, and so it's like the rants, if there's crazy news, it's crazy views. And if there's nothing to talk about, then I can't do a rant, and that's why the reviews will continue to be a very important part, because that's always something. There's always new cars coming out. There's always stuff to do as far as that side of it goes. But it's the same thing with the relic stuff. If I show up at a junkyard and there isn't some person that did insane mods to something, or if there isn't some super rare relic, if it's just boring stuff, okay, it's like the weekly update. It's like, well, this is what we have this week, guys, and no one watches it because there's no sexy title, there's no crazy thumbnail, so that is one of the limiting factors of those for sure. But yeah, I mean, there are other junkyard channels that do really good views, like 100,000 views a video, pretty much. So I know the potential's there. It's just trying to again break through the competition, and just the way the algorithm is set up. It is very challenging unless you got some real crazy Mr. Beast style thing that stands out from the crowd. Otherwise, it's like it's a tough grind. And Goth Rocker says, I will never understand how the Honda Accord does not have or offer all-wheel drive. Honda said they want efficiency, but makes no sense. It's not competitive. Yeah, and the efficiency thing doesn't. I mean, because they're doing all-wheel drive hybrids, with the Pilot and stuff as well. So I mean, I don't buy that. I mean, you have it in CRV, all-wheel drive and hybrid. So I don't buy that for a minute. And I mean, it's actually a pretty reliable, or I mean, a pretty fuel efficient car with the CRV hybrid too, with the all-wheel drive. It still gets really good fuel economy. You're at 40 or so, or I think it's even a little higher than that. So I mean, I don't buy that at all. And Goth Rocker says also, Ford also made a big mistake eliminating all the cars. All the nameplates they made popular, they threw away. Taurus, Fusion, Focus. Also, no Lincoln luxury cars, Continental Town Car. Yep, I know. Tons of stuff there. They just flushed it all down the toilet, unfortunately. And to end us out here, we have the Scramble stopping by to say hi. So thanks so much for stopping by. And thanks to all of you for a great chat here tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you especially to, again, all those members and all those super chatters there. I really appreciate all of your support once again. Stay tuned for the CX-5 review here tomorrow, and then stay tuned for another live here on Wednesday, and some more good stuff as well. Hopefully some more rants and all that too. But thank you all so much again for hanging out here, and have a great, happy, healthy, safe week, especially those of you getting hit with this blizzard or whatever on the East Coast. Hope everyone stays nice and warm and dry. So anyway, take care. Have a great one.